Muted.
All right, having a quorum present, I'll call to order the August 28th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject that's within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on today's agenda. The total time for this item is 10 minutes. I have 3 speakers slip. Dave Lombardi, followed by Richard Yates. Mr. Lombardi. And Mr. Yates, if you would get ready to come, please. Right here. And please try to speak into the microphone. If you sit in that chair so it gets your better angle on City TV.
Thank you. Oh, great. I want to see my mug on there. Thank you very much. My name is Dave Lombardi. I am the owner of Distinctive Framing and Art on the 1300 block of State Street, 1333 State Street. I'm also the block captain and one last title is the president of the downtown organization. I'm speaking to you today in regards to the draft conditions of approval for the Arlington project. And we have a couple of considerations. I typed up a letter, had most of the business owners that are prevalent to that project sign it on the back. That's on the second page. And so you will see the concerns that we have. Most of it is for during the construction, the parking and where they're going to stage their trucks and the possibility of having Sola Street looked at to close during construction. And then also afterwards, we are looking at how they will stage the trucks and the motor coaches during the shows. So those are the kind of the big things that we're concerned about. As you well know, a lot of this has been thrown upon you out of your realm of operation. So I appreciate you guys taking this on and looking at it. I know it's a big project, but one of the biggest things that we need to do is look at what's going to happen long term and in the parking situation. 100 parking places are going to be taken away. A few are going to be back for the public, and the vitality, the livelihoods of many businesses depend on that Sola Street parking. So we would really have you look at that. These conditions, as stated in the draft for the approval, is really unacceptable to the business owners on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardi. Richard Yates, followed by
Chair.
Mr. DeForest.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is that letter going to be forwarded? I understand there's appeal. Is that letter going to be forwarded to the City Council?
I'm sure it will be part of the package. Usually all that information is forwarded.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie?
Could staff add Mr. Lombardi's name to the noticing when this project comes before us again? Or any other body? Thank
Okay,
you.
I will put a check and add to the mailing list for future agenda items. Mr. Yates, please.
Are these both live or?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. I spoke before you previously when this item came up too, and so I basically am echoing Dave Lombardi's concerns about the parking situation. Once again, I would reiterate that we're totally in support of the owners of Arlington being able to create this great and beautiful improvement on the area, but we really feel there's a lot of economic vitality that's going to be threatened by the parking not being sufficiently taken into account. Lots of us, for instance, during the day, that lot is pretty much full with workers and guests and customers. And once that's gone, it's going to just flood the surrounding streets. It's going to make it very difficult for businesses to have their customers get access to them. There's no provision for replacing it. They are going to do 49 spaces for the public, I think, but there's no provision in their proposal for how we're going to stop other people who are just like maybe visitors of the residents there from using those spaces too. So really, it's cutting it in half, and it's maybe even cutting it more than half. And as Dave said too, during the construction, that's going to be a real problem if Sola Street is also closed down. So we're very concerned that more consideration could be given to the parking situation, and we really do wish it could be somehow urged that they would provide more in the way of underground parking. And I know that that's been considered by them not to be economically feasible, but At the same time, it is something that could be done. It's been done in other proposals, and they could make money on the parking downtown too. So it seems like it wouldn't be an economically unviable thing to request. So, and I know that the Historic Landmarks Commission is more concerned with the aesthetics, but this is just a planning issue that we'd like to ask to be reconsidered properly before the minutes are finalized.
Okay.
So that's our comment. I think I reflect a lot of the business owners in the area concerns as well. And so we'd just really like to ask that this be reconsidered. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr.
thank you very
Yates.
much.
Mr. DeForest?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could the staff respond to his request for reconsideration, if it's possible?
I think it's public comment right now. We'd rather have that discussion when we consider the minutes.
minutes, I
We'll
think
have a
that's
discussion
more
on
appropriate, yeah.
the minutes and actually conditions of approval.
Okay.
If you could stay around for that.
Mr. DeForest, you have the
Yes.
floor.
I've been getting emails about the Historic Landmarks Commission allowing the house at 209 Isley to be demolished without any conceptual plans, reassuring the neighbors and those wishing to keep the historic ambience of the Upper East Side. The new historic resources guidelines recommend adaptive reuse of structures. Discussions by the committee writing the historic resources element discussed how structures or artifacts that were not deemed official designation could be protected as contributing to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Hernandez?
We accepted the report.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Seeing no other public, I'll close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of August 14th, 2013. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Do I have a second? We have a motion by Lavoy, a second by Drury. Under discussion, any additions, corrections, or clarifications to the minutes?
Yeah.
You want to start off, Mr. Lamone?
Well, I have specific discussion on item 6. If you want to jump to item 6, 1330 Chicago Street, you can.
It's the minutes, so anything's fair
Okay,
game.
Okay. So what we had after I looked at the video is a set of a pair of draft minutes, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to look at them prior to having them sent out to you. That the minutes began with a combination of commentary that I think Chair Suding tried to relay back to the applicant. As the comments were being completed, the commission entered into a series of straw votes, which essentially created some conflicts with the comments. So what I've taken the liberty of doing is eliminating some of the comments that I think aren't applicable now based on the straw votes. So I'd like to walk you through those changes. They're up on the screen, and you can look at the draft minutes attachment that I have distributed. And what I also did was the actual motion was clarified. It was broken up in several areas in the minutes, and I combined it under the motion and included that you did grant project design approval and made the CEQA findings as per the staff memorandum that was given to you. But you also had suggested amendments to the conditions of approval, and we listed them separately down below. And I'll have Allison walk you through those changes that were suggested. And then we also had comments. So essentially the area one there, we have comments that have been stricken, and I wanted to confirm that you're in agreement with that, those comments not being necessarily applicable now, given you made statements regarding story poles.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lamone.
Yes.
The handout that you gave to us, I believe, is missing a page.
Yes.
Page 9. It didn't get double-sided, so
Okay.
I know it's up on the screen, but it's helpful
Would you like
to
to
me.
make some copies? Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm kind of lost because
Yes.
I'm trying to compare.
I apologize
So I
for
think it's important that we have all the pages
Yes.
before we proceed.
Let's get through that.
We're going to go into recess at the moment then.
information late prior to your meeting. You didn't really have an opportunity to. However, what I wanted you to allowing staff to not place items in packets. There are legal packets. We send things out electronically. And sometimes we defer some things to the following week. And unfortunately here, when we were drafting these conditions of approval, they took longer than usual. And we also have this sequel findings discussion that we had to work out with our city attorney. So what I'm making a commitment to you is in the future, if you do not have these conditions well in advance, the item will not be scheduled. And I also wanted you to know that the appropriate type of direction to staff would be to indicate that there was not enough sufficient time and to ask that a continuance be made to the project. And I know it's difficult for the applicant, but you do have that prerogative to say, we need more time to consider these conditions. Related to that, the city is examining carefully which conditions are actually conditions of approval, because this is sort of a new realm to actually have the boards start conditioning projects. Historically, the conditions were always geared towards the Planning Commission asking the boards to be careful and check these elements. So we don't want the commission itself conditioning themselves, saying, check for this is a condition. Well, that condition will be part of your comments. It can be made clearly, you take care of this, and this is still required as far as the project is concerned. So as we move forward, you'll be seeing some more discussion about that. Again, one last thing related to the whole issue of average unit density projects. The city is still reviewing the considerations on when those projects should receive some type of internal city review and referral to the Planning Commission. That additional discussion will happen on September 12th by City Council. So I just wanted you to be aware of it. We're recognizing these are more complicated, but conceivably more complicated projects that may warrant that type of referral to this Planning Commission.
It's almost a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, and we will have
Needs to
another
happen.
staff discussion here with the city planner. Will attend and give you a report on where we're heading with this type of
'Cause
review.
I'm sure the joint PC City Council meeting agenda is pretty
That will be discussed.
But I know, but it almost needs another.
It may be
Okay.
referred further.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Are
one
you
of-
done, Mr. Limo?
Yes, regarding that issue.
One of the things that concerns me is the fact that these, it's not on the computer for people to pick up. And when you look at the Harbor Commission, everything is on staff report, results, minutes, everything. You look at ours, SIP. And any conditions or any projects or anything that is being discussed should be on the website for the public to review. And that makes it open to the public. Otherwise, it's not effective. So I think opening up our email, opening up the site is important too.
And we have placed these conditions on the website per your direction, so they are available now. Well, hopefully, again, we'll be a little bit more organized. It's sort of additional work on staff now with these projects, and we have to sort of divide these responsibilities so everybody knows what their task is. So getting back to the conditions,
Mr. Lavoy.
Mr. Lamone?
Yes.
So I have a question. Jumping ahead and just scanning some of the stuff that was struck, even though I was in opposition to the motion. Then if we are giving a project design approval, then all of our concerns as far as the design need to be resolved before we make that motion, or in this case there were some additional things that needed to be addressed, and the motion was made with the understanding that those things would be addressed.
Mr. Lavoy, you're correct. The commission needs to be satisfied that in general the design works and that there is sufficient support to have the applicant move forward with more completed drawings. There is such a thing as an in-progress review. That's something that you could also ask for to make it very clear that not to go too far with the final working drawings, so they can return quickly and make sure they're complying with any type of concern that you still express. But you're correct. We don't want you to provide or grant project design approval if there's still some design tweaking that needs to affect the project in a great way. That if you feel comfortable that the detailing will result in your direction, then it is appropriate to say, move forward.
Okay, thank you.
A question for you too, Mr. Limon. At what point does the commission need to voice their desire to reconsider the motion? Is there a
Yes.
time frame on that? I mean,
Right. No, when the last time, I don't know if some of you were here, but we had this discussion when we updated our guidelines for all our review boards. And we had careful, deliberate discussion with the city attorney about what the appropriate timeframes were. And what we did was essentially try to mimic what happens with the Planning Commission and City Council, where it's very quick. The decision to reconsider has to be forwarded to staff so we can agendize it at its next hearing. It is not appropriate to bring it up at the next hearing and say, I want to reconsider it. We're supposed to agendize it. So that's been tightened up now.
it's a little difficult to do that since we don't get the minutes published until 5 days before the meeting.
True, but I don't know.
We have to rely on our memory of what was said. And
Yes, and if you would like to reconsider, I mean, if you were in attendance, it needs to happen quickly. And
Right.
that could happen for cause, that something was misrepresented, or you think that you can get a motion to reconsider because there was some additional concerns you had about the projects.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so getting back to these conditions, under design comments, would you like me to walk through each one that's been stricken, or do you want to just read them and comment
I
on
don't
it?
think it's necessary to walk through every one that was
Okay.
stricken. So shall I read what stands then?
Yes.
Okay, so under design comments, the architecture needs to be more breathtaking and special. Next, architecture needs to be simpler and less adorned. The trash enclosure location at the Paseo is not appropriate, and the modification request is not supportable. Traffic department needs to deal with the truck management plan, study using less fenestration. The commission is supportive of the requested waiver for parking lot finger planters based on the alternative landscaping provided.
Okay, so that completes the
Design
comments.
comments,
If-
okay.
And the next section has to do with the compatibility analysis that was provided. And what's missing from that was the discussion with respect to, you'll see number 5 there, has the project been designed to be sensitive to the adjacent city landmarks and historic resources? It was implicit by the motion that this commission felt that the project had met the criteria, and we asked for it to be elaborated. Unfortunately, that was not elaborated, so what I did was restate in a direct manner that you believed it was sensitive to the adjacent city resources, although there was some commentary conflicting about some members believing not so, that it was not being
And
sensitive.
that's reflected in the action.
Right. So I didn't want to elaborate the rationale based on why you thought it'd been this, but I would presume that you could have indicated, because we did have considerable discussion about that site plan and the setback to Arlington Hotel and whether or not it was, in fact, acceptable location.
Right.
Okay, and then the last section I'll leave to Allison. She can walk you through the conditions of approval and how they've been amended. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Suding. Just as a quick summary, each of the items listed there that identify additional conditions of approval have been added to the draft, to the conditions of approval which are in front of you. They're shown as track changes so that you can see what's new. Most of them were listed under the design review heading. For example, enhanced pavement, solar energy systems, stormwater management, and project directory. There were 2 minor notations that I wanted to make where the conditions actually conflict a little bit. One is on page 4. It's item number 3E, and then number 6. And it says, no heavy equipment, storage of materials, or parking shall take place within 6 feet of the drip line of any trees. That does conflict with item 2 above, which says within 3 feet of the drip line, so I just want to make that correction to make them consistent at 3 feet. And then one final correction on page 9.
I'm sorry, so we're changing it to 3 feet instead of 6 feet?
Correct.
Okay.
Or alternatively, they could both read 6, but they need to be consistent is the...
I
Yeah.
would like to see 6, knowing what I have observed.
Okay, well, we can hold that. Let Ms. DeBus get through the changes.
Okay, and then the other changes on page 9, item E, the shoring design. It said special design of the shoring is required to minimize the potential for deflection that may damage the Arlington Theater. And just to make that more general, that may damage adjacent structures. So that would be the
Okay.
only other change.
Okay. So after you've mentioned those changes, there's a discussion that I believe Ms. Arias wants to bring up. Ms. Arias, on item 3E, number 6, you wanted to keep the 6 feet?
Yes, I want to keep the 6 feet. My experience and observation is with significant trees, the 6 feet is necessary to protect them.
Again, we're talking about the drip line of the
I-
tree, which is, usually considerably,
It can be and it cannot, but remember, these are transplanted trees, some of them, and they need to be protected.
I don't want to get too restrictive, but what does the rest of the commission feel? You want 6 or 3?
6.
Okay, then can we change that to 6, Mr. Busk, please, to be consistent in both locations? I think you said it was number 3 somewhere. 3E,
3E.
and then somewhere else it was mentioned,
No, that's it.
wasn't it?
Correct, it's items number 1, 2, and 6 under E all refer to the distance from the drip line, so they'll be all
Okay,
corrected to 6.
Okay, got it. I see it there now. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I'd like to
Commissioner
make a
Reese.
couple of comments. I don't know how many times I've gotten versions of this document, but I really appreciate Allison and the work she has done to go over this piece by piece by piece by piece, because I went over it piece by piece by piece by piece.
And then she dragged me into it.
Yes, I did drag you into it. And there is one item that I have changed my opinion on, even though we cannot remove it from the minutes in that regards the closing of the street. At the time I made the motion or suggested that as a possibility, I did not realize that the parking lot to the bankruptcy court is dependent upon that street access. And so I really feel, I really can't support that closure of that street. But it's in the minutes, and I've been told like we can't delete it, but at least it's the traffic department is going to look at it, and hopefully they will agree that it's not appropriate. But I agree that the concern of parking up in that area for the adjacent stores is very, very, very critical to their survival. And my intent was to get the construction done as fast as possible, but I think that was not going to be effective. So I am apologizing for that. I was looking for a way that would be better, but it wasn't.
And we did ask the applicant to look at depressing the parking quite a bit more in order to bring the height of the building down. And if you all remember, they couldn't do that because of access issues and grade issues. So it's not that we haven't tried. We've tried to get more parking, and it didn't work. So, okay. We have the then conditions of approval wrapped up. I think everybody's comfortable with them.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Drury?
Mr. Limon, can I just add a question here? You've stricken provide an access through the historic gate because
I believe the commission can enforce that requirement.
You believe the commission can't?
Can
Can.
enforce that requirement. So were they not providing that, or did you ask
No,
them to
they
provide
were
it?
not
There was
providing
no
that.
provision for that.
Okay, and did you direct them to provide it?
Yes.
3 times.
Okay, and they haven't responded.
They've responded, but not
in a
Not in a
not
positive way.
not in the direction they
Okay,
wanted
what
to.
I would do is have that remain as a comment and make it very clear, if it's not, that you expect that to be a design change to come back to you. So we could re-add it.
Yeah, so unstrike item I.
unstrike.
unstrike item I.
And then on the conditions of approval, these are just suggested conditions, right? So to facilitate construction, study closing Solar Street temporarily is simply suggested. It's not set in stone.
And perhaps we could say to facilitate construction, studying closing Solis Street or parts of Solis Street temporarily.
I wouldn't support it at all.
You don't support it at all?
I don't.
I
I
don't
don't.
either.
But that's when that comes
Well,
up.
I mean, this is the draft.
Might it be better to say that construction staging needs to be coordinated with the vitality of the adjacent businesses?
Fine by me.
I don't know how you define it.
The commission, Chair Seating,
Mr.
the
Buss?
city attorney has directed that we not materially change the conditions that were adopted through your action last week. However, I have spoken with the Transportation Division in terms of, is this possible, is this something you would ever do? And they fairly emphatically said no, that they would not close Solis Street unless absolutely necessary for a certain portion of construction, like connecting utilities. But otherwise, they'd handle it like any other construction project where they keep the street open as much as possible
Okay.
to facilitate,
Okay.
commerce, et cetera.
Okay, so then let's just leave the comment as is, and sounds like it
It will-
has been studied.
and that is how they handle-
That's fine. That's
correct.
fine, so let's leave it at that then. Any other comments, changes? How about the remainder of the minutes? Are there any additions, corrections, or
Mr. Chair,
clarifications? Yes,
on
Commissioner
the
Urias.
project on Mission and State Street, we
1936
had
State.
we had a discussion about, this is near a very, very busy corner, and there was discussion about the ingress and egress of the project from State Street, and I would very much like to have the minutes reflect that the city traffic staff should look at the ingress and egress of this project, given the congestion that occurs on State and Mission.
Okay.
Because crossing the flow of traffic is going to cause a lot of problems.
Okay, so under the motion, item number 2, it says, Transportation Division and your Engineering Department shall look at the circulation operational elements, specifically any ingress, egress, and flow of traffic at the State Street access.
State Street, yes, and Mission,
Okay.
taking in admission.
Okay, so if we could add to that State and Mission access, State and Mission access points. Got that?
Or maybe just make sure that it says State Street and Mission Street access.
That's, yeah. Got that? Okay. Oh, you did it on the fly. All right. Anything else? Anybody? Are we all satisfied then with item 6? I think I would like to express appreciation to staff, Mr. Busk, Mr. Lamone, and in particular to Ms. Arias for helping clean up those items. I think that was extremely helpful above and beyond. And I apologize that they were so messy. Okay, so we had a motion by Lavoy, a second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Sharp abstains.
We have 2 abstentions. We have Winnick and Sharp abstain. Okay. Moving on. Consent calendar. Ms. Gantz, are you ready?
Item A at 2786 Cuesta del Sol was final approval as submitted. Item B at 32 West Carrillo Street was project design approval and final approval as submitted. Item C, 0 block of West Mason Street was postponed 2 weeks. Item D at 1221 Anacapa Street was final approval as noted. Item E at 24 East Coda Street was continued 2 weeks to consent. And item F at 11 Garden Street was final approval as noted. Those items were reviewed by Commissioner Sharp except for item F, which was reviewed by Chair Suding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharp, for doing the consent calendar. Appreciate that.
Motion to ratify
Thank
the
you.
consent calendar?
Anybody second? Okay, we have a motion by Lavoy, a second by Arias. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is announcements or requests by applicants, appeals, withdrawals, so on and so forth.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners Boucher, Murray, and Schallenberger will be absent from today's meeting.
No kidding.
I'm announcing that for the public,
I know.
too. The HLC will go on a walkabout site visit of a portion of the Safe Passage Corridor project at 2:30 p.m. on September 18th. The meeting location is the pepper trees at the corner of Laguna Street and Plaza Rubio in Mission Historical Park. And I never do get an answer for Commissioner Winnick. Are you going to be attending?
I believe so.
Okay. All righty. And then I'll let Mr. Olson know. And then Chair Suding will attend the semi-annual joint meeting of the City Council and Planning Commission on Thursday, September 12th at 9:30 a.m. in this room. Other members of the HLC may also attend.
I encourage them to attend because we're going to be having the discussion about the conditions of approval and the CEQA findings.
What was the date again?
September 12th. I believe it starts at
9:30.
9:30 in this room. Okay.
Well, we may have a quorum.
You may have a quorum, so September, you can adjourn the September 11th meeting
okay,
to this.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it going to be televised? It is. Okay. That.
I will not be in attendance.
Okay. So Mr. Winnick, Commissioner Rios, and probably Commissioner Lavoy, if you can get around to watching the recording of it.
I intend to show up.
You intend to show up? Great. Okay. Great. Wonderful. All right. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. Anything else?
That's all I have, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Ms.
Commissioner
Gans,
Drury.
could you give me the date of the walkabout again?
That is on September 18th,
Thank you.
2:30 in the afternoon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other announcements by commissioners? Okay, how about subcommittee reports? Did anybody have any subcommittee meetings? Okay, then we'll move on to the first item, which is a miscellaneous action item for the resolution of intention for 1236 Garden Street. And before we go on, Ms. Hernandez, I have a speaker slip here from Mr. DeForest, but it does not indicate what you want to speak to.
Oh, excuse me. Well, I was hoping I could get in on this, but...
We don't usually take public comment during discussion of the meeting, of the minutes.
I understand.
Okay?
Well, I can give you an official one now.
Okay, and this is for one of the items upcoming?
1236.
Okay, all right. Ms. Hernandez, please.
Hi. 1236 Garden Street was constructed between 1898 and 1903 in the Queen Anne Free Classic style. It is found significant in the Historic Structure Report for its historical and architectural influence on the heritage of Santa Barbara, and it qualifies as a structure of merit. We're asking that you pass a resolution of intent to hold a public hearing on November 20th, 2013 to designate this building as a structure of merit.
Okay, does somebody want to do that?
So moved.
We have a motion by Lavoy.
Second.
We have a second by Arias, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? There you go. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't open public comment.
I just also, we included the draft of the staff report
Right, I
that
got
will
to
be
see that.
discussed on the 20th, but so you have it ahead of time.
Okay.
And to remind you what the project was, you all reviewed the
Yeah.
project very carefully.
I'm sorry, I need to reopen the item and then go to public comments. I apologize, Mr. DeForest, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend this as being, this structure as being a landmark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Closing public comment. And we've had a motion and a vote, so I'm not going to do that over again. Nothing changes. All right? Okay. Don't go there. Okay, item 2. Miscellaneous action item for a resolution of intention for 1601 State Street. Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, this is a building constructed in 1959 in the vernacular form of the mid-century modern style as a motor inn, and it qualifies as a structure of merit for historic and architectural influence on the city of Santa Barbara. And we are asking you to pass a resolution of intent to have a public hearing on November 20th, 2013, to designate this as a structure of merit.
Okay.
So moved.
No, under public comment. Seeing no public, I'll close public comment. Any discussion from the commission? You wanted to make a
I'll
motion?
make that motion.
Second?
Okay, we got a motion by Drury and a second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, don't fight now. All right, the next item on the agenda, and I apologize that we are about 15 minutes behind. It's an archaeology report for 336 West Cabrillo Boulevard. This is a proposal for alterations to the rear elevation of an existing three-story hotel. Ms. Gantz.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Dr. Glassell reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's conclusions and recommendations. Specifically, he recommended archaeological monitoring of the earth moving associated with the proposed construction because of the proximity to prehistoric cultural deposits.
Okay. Under discussion, I'll open public comment. I'll close public comment. Somebody want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Arias, second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The motion carries. Next item is project design review for 336 West Cabrillo Boulevard. This is the El Patio Beachside Inn. This is a proposal for alterations to the rear elevation of an existing three-story hotel. Please introduce yourself for the record and go ahead and give us a brief presentation.
Tai Ye, architect.
I'm going to take that and that. Thank you. Okay. All right. So you were here on February 13th of this year. And it was continued indefinitely with the following comments. The French doors are an improvement to the rear elevation. The filling in of the existing mechanical door is appreciated. Study adding more landscape to mitigate the elevator tower. Research the permitting of the existing mechanical equipment on the rooftop. Okay, why don't you address how you've addressed those? Tell us how you've addressed those.
Mechanical on the rooftop, we will eliminate it.
Can you turn that microphone on?
What page is he on?
He's on A1.
Looks different. That's why.
Oh,
I could see the trees.
this is supplemental with what's in the package. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Continue.
So this roof equipment was originally part of the restaurant cooking facilities. Since the space has been empty for more than 10 years, we have no need to keep that hood anymore. So we like to follow the suggestion from the board to just omit it during the construction.
Okay. Yeah, just speak a little bit louder, perhaps.
All right. And as far as the landscaping to screen the elevator tower, we did a site study. This location is where the proposed elevator tower is. Currently, we have two evergreen trees. They're about 30 to 40 feet high. And we are planning to keep it being part of the screening. And to the right of the elevator, where right now we have two smaller magnolia trees which will be taken down during the construction. What we are proposing is we have three Kentia palms in the parking lot right now, which looks very nice fitting in the neighborhood. You know, in this neighborhood we have a lot of palm trees. So we're going to propose two more similar to this over this side. So,
Those are actually king palms.
oh, sorry.
That's right. Okay, go ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
So if you were to looking at the elevation that we're proposing, hopefully this screening will improve the existing conditions. I think I have addressed all the comments from the board from last
Okay.
meeting.
You have anything for staff? No? Okay, then I'll open public comment, and I'm acknowledging a written letter from Ms. Paula Westbury in opposition. I'll close public comment and bring it to the commission for questions. Commissioner Drury, you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, yes. Did you say you were removing the 2 magnolia trees and taking them?
Yeah, they're about 8 feet high. They are right in front of the French doors we're proposing, and they are only 1 feet away from the building right now.
So they have to be moved for construction. You wouldn't put them back in the same place?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Lavoie?
No questions?
Commissioner Arias?
questions.
Commissioner Winnick?
No questions.
Do we have a better picture of the palm trees? I'm looking at them again, and they may be Kench's, but I can't tell for sure.
Yeah, I was told it was, but then I don't really know that much about palm trees.
It honestly, with the sheath, looks like it's a king palm to me, so I'm just going to leave that comment then.
Yeah, they don't look wispy.
Hopefully king palms.
Yeah, very healthy.
Yeah, they don't look wispy. Usually Kentias look wispy.
Yeah, well, and they have a little different form to their frond. It doesn't usually rotate along the petiole. Okay, so comments. Commissioner Winnick, any comments?
I appreciate that the applicants have taken a look at adding additional screening. I guess in some ways I could see a little bit more, but I think that, it's nice that they were listening. I guess the one thought I would have is maybe if somehow it could be a little bit denser to create a little more screening would be the one thought for the elevator tower. But, because palm trees are not terribly dense. But anyway, that's pretty much all I would share.
Commissioner Arias?
I agree with him about increasing the can't think of the word, senior moment.
I said density.
Yeah, increasing the density on the elevator tower area. But other than that, I don't have any problems, questions.
Commissioner Lavoie?
I agree. I don't think the palm trees are providing enough biomass.
Commissioner Sharp?
I agree with those comments.
Commissioner Drury?
I too agree with those comments.
I'm going to start out by saying thank you for removing the hood equipment.
Oh, yeah.
We
Thank
really
you.
do
Definitely.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I agree with the rest of the commissioners about the, the removal of the magnolia here. 2 magnolias really will be a loss, considerable loss for the screening. So I think what we're looking for here is something similar with a canopy.
Okay.
And if you want to use a palm, perhaps grouping a palm in amongst those carob, which I actually think are carrot wood, not carob, that would be certainly beneficial to that whole elevator screening thing. Actually, if we look at this bottom picture here, if you stuck a palm in there and had one come up there, that would eventually look rather nice. It's
Sure.
a nice composition. Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion or?
Mr. Chair, could this come back on the consent calendar to make it easier for the applicant?
Yes, it could.
Okay.
I believe it could. I don't see why not.
It does need to come back? It can't be approved
Well,
with
he
a
needs to
condition?
propose something. I guess we could condition it. It's simple enough. Does somebody want to condition the project to provide 2, perhaps, I think Magnolia would be appropriate. Probably Magnolia St. Mary, 15-gallon or 24-inch box. And then 1 king palm amongst the carrot woods.
Is that acceptable to the?
King palm would be 8-foot ground trunk height.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right.
I thought you were done.
No, I am now.
Okay, sorry. I just was asking Mr. Ye if that was going to be acceptable, or do you want to return in 2 weeks?
That's totally acceptable. For
Okay.
Yeah.
Conditioned that way?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So do you want me to repeat those conditions?
Is somebody making a motion for
Sure, I'll
project
make the
design approval and
motion
final approval?
based on the conditions that were just
And I'll
stated.
second it based on the conditions that the chair has indicated regarding the landscaping.
Okay,
So
we
if you
have a
can
motion
repeat-
by Winnick. Okay, a motion by Winnick, a second by Arias, and those conditions were that the applicant provide 2 Magnolia St. Mary 24-inch box in the approximate location of the ones that have been removed, or the ones that are proposed to be removed, and that the applicant provide 1 king palm amongst the existing carrot wood. That king palm should be 8-foot round trunk height.
What, 8 foot?
BTH, brown trunk height. Brown trunk height. You're welcome. Okay, so we had a motion by Winnick and a second by Rios. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? There you go. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to keep, you can have this. We're going to keep the one that was marked up and the other stuff, okay? And keep those.
You can also have this one. Sure, thank you.
Okay, moving right along, breakneck speed. Item number 5 is a miscellaneous action item for 21 West Montecito Street. This is a request by staff to add the building at 21 West Montecito Street to the city's list of potential historic resources. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I received information and a request to designate this building as a historic resource from the public, and she handed me some photographs and gave me a history of the building that I'm going to present to you today. The building was actually constructed in 1925. It was rumored to be a pie shop until 1932, when it did convert into the Mulaney Harley-Davidson shop. It did serve Santa Barbara until 1975 and the Santa Barbara motorcyclist community. The building qualifies as a structure of merit based on its criteria A, C, and I. The little vernacular building is associated with the Art Mulaney Harley-Davidson shop that for 43 years contributed to the motorcycle culture of the city. The shop was noted as the gathering place for motorcyclists, thus the building represents an established and familiar visual feature in the waterfront area, and the vernacular building retains the storefront, red tile roof, and board and batten siding of the original building that demonstrate the influence of the local predominant Spanish colonial revival style of Santa Barbara on the vernacular building. It does retain its original site, design, and materials that allow it to convey its historic significance as a vernacular commercial storefront. I will say that the proposal coming after this, putting it on the potentials list, is to demolish just the very rear part of the building that would not in any way affect the integrity of the storefront, which is the streetscape that we're looking at. And I put some of the pictures for the public to see as well. You can see the influence. This picture, it's hard, I wonder if you can see it better over here, but you can see the building. It looks almost identical as it did when it was the shop.
Motorcycle. Whoa.
And there's just pictures of when it was the Harley-Davidson shop, and this is the streetscape. And there's the building now, and they are proposing to restore it to the storefront. And that's the whole streetscape. It's the only remaining little storefront on that block, and it's right behind the train station.
Returning.
That one.
That little guy, that's our little 1925 building that has,
Okay.
This great photograph. Where did you find those?
those were brought to me by the public that requested it become a historic resource.
Okay. Thank you to that member of the public, who shall remain nameless, I guess.
I think she's here.
Oh.
It's me.
Okay.
She may come forward.
Thank you very much. So, somebody want to make a motion then?
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Public hearing.
Yep, I'm opening public comment. Seeing no public, then I'll close public comment and bring it to the commission.
Make a motion approval with appreciation.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Arias, second by Lavoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Still looking at the pictures.
Next item on the agenda is item 6, 21 West Montecito Street. This is a proposal to demolish a 576 square foot one-story shed from the rear of an existing one-story building.
Maybe I just want to go back.
You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm David Shelton. I'm representing Paul Wasaka, the owner. This is maybe a case of a cart before the horse, but I don't even know if we have a cart at this place. But Paul Wasaka owns all these 3 parcels, which you can see at the top of the drawing.
Do we have, yes, the
I'll let
pointer.
you use the pointer because
The pointer.
your
My
fingers
hand
block.
is blocking the public view. Here we are. This is the little building that you just saw the front of, the little Mulaney's motorcycle shop, and it goes all the way back to here. This is the second parcel, which there's nothing on it, and this is the third parcel. All 3 of these are owned by the same person, by the Wasaka family. This was Caesar's Auto Parts for many, many years, while Mulaney's motorcycle place was right here. This entire parcel, except for this back portion, for reasons which are too complicated to explain, is leased out to the person who has the Ducati motorcycle place in here. And this tenant leased this with intentions of doing something to it and wants to, this project will come before you in the near future. So this part is, Paul Wasaka had some storage in this back shed. So this is the little historic building part, and these are all sheds that attach to it, the little open shop space in the back. So when this came to the city's attention for this project here, they came and looked at it, and they saw this back portion, which there was some photographs that we turned in to this.
It's right there.
Well,
Go ahead.
anyway, we turned in photographs because the city said, oh, you have to take this piece down because it's falling down. And it is sort of falling down. But, and then it got real complicated because, you know, these guys can't go ahead until this is down, and this can't come down until, okay, here's the back, this back portion
It's coming down.
is what we're proposing to take down.
Okay.
And so no one is, Paul has nobody objects to the motion that just happened, but the city wants this down, and you know what, we can't take it down until it comes to you, and this guy can't, you know, that's where we're at now.
Okay.
So we're proposing just to take this 500 and whatever it is square foot shed down.
Okay. All right. I'll open public comment. I'm acknowledging a written letter from Ms. Paula Westbury in opposition. I'm closing public comment and bring back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Winnick, you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner
No
Arias?
questions.
Commissioner Lavoy?
No questions.
Commissioner Sharp?
No.
Commissioner Drury?
Yes, how old is that shed that's going to be knocked down?
I don't know. I presume it may be as old as the front, but
It has the same board and batten siding as the front. It's just that when we look at significance of a structure merit, we mainly look at the streetscape elevations.
So
They were going to build back, I think, just board and batten to match on the rear when they close it off. So they're just shortening the rear.
Is there any salvageable wood? Is it redwood or anything?
if we can salvage it, we will. That was our first intention. Anybody who knows me knows I salvage about anything.
I can vouch.
We will, but I must say there is some shaky boards there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, comments. Commissioner Winnick, any comments?
I can support the project, yes.
Oh, yes.
Easily.
Lavoy?
Support.
Sharp?
Yep.
Drury?
No.
No comments? Okay, somebody want to make a motion then?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll make the proposal to grant design approval as requested by the applicant, as submitted.
Design approval and final approval?
Sure. Design and final.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Winnick, a second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, I'm going to, thank you. I'm going to call a 10-minute recess.
Nice thing in here.
Next item is going to be item 7.
You can have this one.
2112 Santa Barbara Street.
Souvenir.
I'll have to find it. You can have this one too, David. You can have that one too. Yeah. Well, we know how you like to collect things.
She wanted both of us.
There you are.
See ya.
Okay, so mine's the same.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, I think.
Commission meeting of August 28th, excuse me. The next item on the agenda is item 7 for 2112 Santa Barbara Street. This is a proposal for a voluntary lot merger of assessor parcel numbers 025, 252, 006, and 007, and a change in use from commercial to residential. This project requires compliance with Staff Hearing Officer Resolution number 044-13. Project was last reviewed on March 7th, 2013, and I will read those minutes. And it was continued to the Staff Hearing Officer with positive comments in support of the requested modifications in design. Item 1, the owner is commended for the appropriate restoration of the building, living within the perimeter of the existing building, and removing some of the non-historically significant additions. Number 2, reconsider the use of a more historically appropriate paving material at the entrance walkway and in the motor court. Rios had opposed because although she supports the project, she is concerned with the potential effect on the garden by the pool and considered that it warranted further review. Okay. Please introduce yourselves for the record and give us a brief presentation.
Barbara Lowenthal, Harrison Design.
Welcome.
Chris Kimple, Landscape Architect.
Welcome. Go ahead.
We don't have many changes except we did have some requirements from the Staff Hearing Officer, and they're on the landscape. Which one, Chris? L1?
L1, so shall we go to L1? Everybody to L1? If you want to use the pointer, Ms. Kimball.
Looks like it must be L2. Oh, no, here it is.
So you want,
We were required to delineate in the field the 2 uncovered parking spaces. So as a result, Chris went back and took a look at the materials that we were using and chose to do it in the brick because brick is used throughout the house. Also, we went back with the historians and looked at Ralph Stevens' original landscape plan, and he does call out for concrete in this area on his plan. So we stuck with the concrete as a result, removed the grass banding, and substituted the brick around the perimeter to comply with the Staff Hearing Officer requirement.
And you're calling that out to be colored textured concrete. What's the color, what's the texture?
it'll be buff colored to go to tie in with the stone walls that's out there, the Santa Barbara sandstone. And texture like a salt finish or sandblast finish, just so it's pitted and not smooth concrete.
Okay. Okay. So it's not a stamped or made to look like faux sandstone or anything? Okay. Anything else to?
And then we do call out, we originally had Cherokee Creek stone. These are the existing sandstone steps here in the sandstone landing. And we originally had Cherokee Creek to break up this old concrete drive to announce the entry to the residents there, and then also the landing and the steps. And we've since changed that to the buff colored concrete as well.
Makes sense. Cheaper too. Okay.
Yes.
That's it?
That's it. And then the planting, the tree types and everything per the conceptual plan that was approved has remained the same.
Okay.
So I finalized the planting plan. This was the asphalt parking area that has since now been a garden with boxwood and Hong Kong orchid trees to frame that, turf in the middle, and then the plantings that we were redoing in the front that we had, the pygmy date palm, the giant bird of paradise, the infilling of the star jasmine in the ground cover, bird of paradise, the agaves, variegated pittisporum. It was all called out originally.
I will open public comment, and I have 2 speaker slips. The first is Susan Chamberlain, followed by no name. I am thinking that's Mr. DeForest. Ms. Chamberlain.
He's appearing as no.
Just looking for my own identification.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Chamberlain, and I've been here before reminding everyone that the Secretary of the Interior's standards for historic properties include
Use your best outside voice. Go ahead.
cultural landscapes. And I apologize that I haven't been able to follow this. My mother fell in February. But I would like to hand out something that I wrote in a book, Shaping the American Landscape, about Ralph Stevens. And Post Hazeltine used the online version of this for their research. which doesn't include the author credit. It was greatly condensed. And if you look on the very back page, you'll see flip it over, you'll see, keep going, picture of the Hodges residence right there. And what was unique about this plan is that it was from
Could we get City TV to zoom in? Excuse me, Ms. Chamberlain. Go ahead.
California Southland Magazine, 1922. And his use of forced perspective in the garden is specifically mentioned, which was highly innovative at that time. And I'm not even sure if you're still planning a pool in the garden, am I right? And so you can't just plop a pool in that without... It's a major remodel. This is a very intact Ralph Stevens garden that's well documented. And the final point I would like to make is that Post-Hazeltine's report said that because they could remove the pool, it wouldn't be altering or making a significant impact. But I'm sure you know that a pool is a major construction project with a great deal of cut soil required, and to remove it would be like saying you could just put an addition on the house and easily remove it, therefore you're not remodeling the house. So I know I'm late to the party, I apologize. I just would like this to be part of the record, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Next is Kellum DeForest. Mr. DeForest?
If the lot merger is the issue today, that's fine. In fact, it's unclear of why the gardener's chauffeur's quarters got on a separate parcel in the first place. But they certainly can be recombined, as I presume they were originally when... I don't have their names down there, the owners, and designed the original thing. Problem that I have is the historic Ralph Stevens garden. Obviously, as Ms. Chamberlain has pointed out, the placing of the swimming pool, although tastefully designed and well fitting into the design of the house, it means that the Ralph Stevens garden is no longer I think could hardly be considered as a structure of merit status, and definitely not a landmark. Thank you.
Okay, I'm acknowledging a written letter from Ms. Paula Westbury in opposition, and then I'm closing public comment and bring it back to the commission unless staff has anything to add. I would like you to respond to Ms. Chamberlain's
Yes,
concerns.
We had received some of these concerns in writing, and I had asked the preparers of the report if they'd wish to change any of their conclusions, and they did not. I still support the report because, one, it is not, even a structure of merit, still you're allowed to reasonable use of your property, and being out of the public visibility of the public right-of-way, rear additions and rear alterations do meet the Secretary of Interior standards because you no longer have the public benefit of the front of the visibility of the building, which is how we as the government can have design review. And that is how I've been taught to interpret private residences in relation to preservation law.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner Winnick, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Arias?
I have one question, which I'm not sure. You do not plan to fence the pool. It's my understanding. You figure that the house and the fencing around the property would be adequate, correct?
If we're required to fence the pool, it will be fenced.
Okay.
in the way that we're required to fence it.
My
I'm
comment-
sure our clients want it to be safe for
Yeah,
anyone.
my concern was, my question was, did you by chance, what I have been told, that if you have a house as part of the fencing or protection from the pool, then all the doors and windows on that side of the house have to be specific. And so I didn't know whether you knew if that was true or not.
We haven't gone into the building department yet, but once we do,
just
whatever the
curious to know.
requirements are, we'll comply with them. I
Yeah, I'm
can
sure you will. I was just
guarantee you.
curious if you had that information.
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lavoy, any questions?
Yeah, there's a comment about a forced perspective in the garden. In the garden where the pool is, are the walkways parallel or do they taper?
The existing brick walkways?
Yes,
They're parallel.
they're parallel.
Mhm.
Okay. So the perspective is normal.
Right. And we did not change any of the topography. We literally laid the pool out in keeping with the topography of the garden. That's why it's designed the way it is, to look like one of his reflecting pools, if you will.
Commissioner Sharp?
No questions.
Commissioner Drury, any questions?
So just to be clear, the forced perspective, the walkways, they don't exist anymore as in this photograph?
Well, that's a foreshortened photograph. The way we show them on the plan is the way they are on the ground
Okay,
today.
so-
And in fact, we have actually restored part of the garden the way it was originally designed to this side of the pool right here. This is not the way it looks currently.
Okay. And it hasn't looked that way for a number of years, I suspect?
No, because it was used as commercial property and many changes were made to the back side of the house, which we are removing, and also to the garden.
Thank you.
Two questions. Where's the pool equipment?
The pool equipment is still to be determined by Chris, but it will probably be, as I told you last time, because you didn't like it under the house, although we do that all the time, in the back.
Wow.
I had to get that out, Phil. In the back, there's that little garden that's hidden. It's just got stone on the ground right now. So we're probably going to locate it in there because you can't see it.
It's well screened.
Yes,
That's
it's
all I'm
away
getting
from
at.
the neighbors.
That's all I'm
so-
getting at. I want it to be well screened.
Yeah, you can't see it at all.
Okay, and then second question. Does this have to follow the low water use landscape design, and you've complied with that?
I have
Okay.
the calcs on the
Okay.
other sheet,
Okay,
and I have
perfect.
irrigation in here as well.
Perfect. Okay. Comments, Commissioner Winnick? Any
Did we
comments?
have public comment?
Oh,
Did we? Maybe
we already did public
We
comment.
did? I'm sorry. I'm
No,
spaced.
excuse me.
I'm sorry. I was on the last project, I guess. I feel I could support the project. So.
Commissioner Rios?
I feel a gratitude that you're returning it from commercial to single family, and you're doing a lot of restoration, and I can support the project.
And the pool, okay. Commissioner?
Well, that's it, the pool.
Commissioner Lavoy?
I'd like to begin with the comment that this pool is going in a lawn area. So the concept that we're ripping out a garden to put in a pool is somewhat misleading. This is only a lawn area, has been historically a lawn area. So to drop a reflecting pond in there would have been something consistent with the design of the period and this particular landscape architect. So I have all along supported the proposal and considered it approvable.
What uses more water, a lawn or a pool?
A lawn. Probably. Well,
Actually, the lawn-
Yeah, just
the lawn does.
Now when the pool has a
Palm
leak.
Springs.
Oops, sorry.
Commissioner Sharp, any comments?
I agree with Ms. Reyes and Mr. Lavoy.
But not Mr. Winnick, okay.
And Mr. Winnick!
It always happens. It's okay.
I'm punchy. All right, Mr.
I
Drury.
agree with the previous comments.
Okay. Somebody want to
Sure.
make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for final design approval for this project as submitted with one condition or one comment, which was the one that you shared about the pool equipment, that it be screened.
Second?
Mr. Chair?
Under discussion?
Oh.
Go ahead.
That would need to be looked at by somebody. Yeah, not just.
Well, and reviewed on consent.
And how about if any fencing material has to happen? Because we need to look at the fencing material.
I'm happy to add that.
Okay.
Right.
So PDA and final approval with condition that
Pool equipment and
pool
fencing
equipment and
return to
fencing
consent.
return to HLC consent in the future.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. I want to thank Ms. Chamberlain for her due diligence on this, and I apologize that it didn't turn out the way you had hoped.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, we're better informed. That's good. This is an extra set, so you can
Somebody
take it.
over there.
Sure. You're welcome.
Are we going to take a recess?
Are we ahead?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Have to.
Gotta go.
Are we ready, Ms. Feliciano? Okay, I'll reconvene the August 28th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. The next item on the agenda is a historic structures report. It's item number 8 for 1130 State Street. This is a review of a historic structures / site report prepared by Post Hazeltine Associates. The report determined that the building is eligible for structure of merit designation, the landscape is eligible for landmark designation, and that the building and landscape are also eligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources and the National Register of Historic Places. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you. I was just going to start off with a few slides to show just what the building looked like during the period of significance. This is a 1949 photograph that shows the building. The period of significance is 1941 to 1950, and this shows the Lockwood DeForest paving on the ground, and it also shows the building right after it was remodeled by David Adler and Chester Cahul for the Santa Barbara Museum of Art. And things to just note would be these planters here and the ornate terracotta. And I wanted to point this out because the reason that I support the report that the building is only eligible as a structure of merit is that so much of that ornate terracotta was stripped off the building sometime before 1963 is the first picture we found where it's gone. So it no longer matches the period of significance. This is a picture we took yesterday. The planters are gone, and you'll see that the terracotta ornament has been stripped, and it's more of a simplified style, which is why, in my opinion, I support the report that if it were to be a landmark status building, I believe that the museum should consider putting in their master plan in the future restoring the ornate terracotta to the period of significance so that it could join the many landmarks on the block, like the library and the courthouse, as a public building of city landmark status, which is such an important status to have. I put this on the slide so we could refer back to it as we move along in our discussion, because there have been so many additions and done to the building. This makes it very clear when things were done. This is the 1912 post office that was remodeled in 1941-42 for the art museum. This is the landscaping done by Lockwood DeForest. This was the 1942 edition, and then you can, and these are the subsequent editions that are dated here. And this is, I think it's figure 12 in your packet. But anyway, figure 19 in your packet. So I wanted to make sure you could access this if you needed to. I also wanted to note that although Commissioner Murray, the historian on the commission, could not be in attendance today, she did review the reports, and I was going to read her comments. She did make comments on the cumulative effects of the new additions on the building, which is something in the first draft we had noted and asked the consultants to address. And they addressed it at the end of the report, but I wanted to read what she wrote it because I'm sure she just wanted to reiterate this. Her concerns are the addition of 3,000 square feet gallery space, addition of 2,200 square feet of administration office, addition of 1,700 multi-purpose gallery, addition of 1,420 square feet elevator stair to roof level to public garden. The cumulative effects of these additions should be included. It is not enough to determine the effects of street-level view sheds, but to make findings as how the proposed massing, heights, proportions will potentially impact a building that the HSSR also determines to be eligible for listing in the National Register, California Register, and as a city structure of merit. She also noted that it is not clear in the report whether the rooftop mechanical equipment will be removed in order to build a rooftop public garden. Thank you, Fermina and Murray.
Okay.
So I wanted to also say that my statement that I do support the conclusions of the report, that this project meets the state CEQA guidelines of the MEA, and the proposed alterations will not impact its potential to be designated a structure of merit.
Is that it? Okay, I'll open public comment. I have one speaker, Mr. DeForest.
I just wanted to, and have my amendations to the report, which I passed out. If anybody has any questions about those, I would appreciate it. I had a question about the plant material and the what the dwarf ornamental plum was. But so please, so I hope my
lots of copies.
Additions or emendations could be added to the report. Thank you.
I will acknowledge a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury in opposition, and I'll close public comment. Bring it actually to Ms. Hernandez. Did you want to respond to Mr. DeForest's comments?
I didn't have any.
You don't have any response? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
I'll bring it to the commission then for questions. Commissioner Drury.
Yes, Ms. Hernandez, could you tell me, were the iron gates part of the original elevation, State Street elevation?
Yes, they were approved for their removal, I believe, in the 1993, and that was with the structures report.
But they date from...
Yes, they're not in this
office.
picture. You can't see them that well in this picture, but there is a picture in your report that shows them pretty clearly.
Figure 6 shows them.
Yeah, and there was grates over the windows as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sharp, any question? No question. Commissioner Lavoie.
Yes, I'll prepare the report, please. Pam and Tim, if you'd come forward.
While we're waiting for them, I want to remind everybody that's in the audience, if you wish to speak, you need to fill out a public speaker slip for item 9.
Pamela Post of Post Hazeltine Associates, one of the preparers of the report. Thank you.
Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming up. I begin by saying another exhaustive and scholarly report. Thank you. I had to read it twice and parts of it 3 times in order to get through all the meat of it.
And he highlighted things.
And I highlighted things because I have a few comments and a few questions. The simplest question to answer, did you check with Gladdy McBean if they were the producers of the terracotta?
No, did not.
Because if they were, they still have the drawings and maybe the molds for the original
Yeah,
work.
and we did mention that, that if they were going to restore those, yeah.
Okay, good. The next question is, I wanted to do it in questions rather than in comments, so that because I can get your response, and I needed some clarification. And it's an overall impression of the document that I have some problems with. The building is not what it was when it was restored by Adler and Carjola. I agree. But what I probably don't agree with is that it's incapable of conveying a significant portion of that impression. So when, and in your report you talk about, well, a significant portion of the Lockwood DeForest landscape walls had been removed at the front of the entrance to put in the stairs. That removal, which I think is significant, doesn't change the qualification of that part of the building. And then Later in the report, when you're addressing the stuff that's being proposed, you say 80% if the cornice can be removed, and that doesn't affect the building. And while it may not affect a structure of merit, if the building was evaluated as a landmark, it definitely would. And then all of these additions over the years, some less sympathetic than others to the original building, that one more addition change to the building isn't going to affect the building. I sort of find hard to follow or to accept very comfortably. And I'd like you to make me more comfortable with that.
First, I believe that 80% of the cornice will remain in place of the existing.
Okay, I get the number reversed.
Yeah, which is the west elevation, the north elevation, and a portion of the east elevation.
Right.
So 80% would remain in place with about 20% being removed. I think, in regards to your question, Commissioner,
Lavoie.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavoie. Was the question about the significance of the building revolving around whether it was at this point eligible as a landmark?
Well, it is the eligibility of the landmark, and granted, 20% of the decoration has been removed. But to me, when I look at the building, it's still, other than I'd love to see that terracotta restored, so, and that'll be a comment, that 80% of what, at least the street facade, of what was done to that building in the period of significance is still there.
And I think we would acknowledge that in the report. Our comment more is that if you look at the west elevation as the one that is the most intact, which I think most people would agree with, that the landmark status would have been achievable if more of that decorative embellishment and some other details that obviously Adler purposely kept because he was removing other things and keeping some. That's why we found it eligible at the structure of merit level, because if that was there, that would reach the level of landmark status, which means that the decorative embellishments that helped convey the Adler scheme, which in some ways has some sort of tension between the reductive nature of the Mediterranean style that he sort of inserted in the planar wall surfaces, but he kept this decorative element that creates kind of a sort of an artistic tension between those two motifs. And I think that was very integral to that feeling that he was trying to achieve. And because it was removed in, say, 61, 63, the removal of that element or those motifs really downgraded that elevation enough that we couldn't find it as a landmark when you combine it with other removals like the gates. And even the Arent Mosher Grant editions, which kind of remove that feeling of a sort of a, not a box, but this rectangular volume in isolation in an urban streetscape. So we felt the changes cumulatively, and Pam could talk to this too, were of such intensity. It didn't remove the ability for it to be a significant resource, but it wasn't really achieving the landmark status, the level of integrity that we usually look for in order to assign a landmark designation to a building.
Okay. Thank you. I think that answers it.
Commissioner Arias?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Winnick?
Yeah, I just have one, and this is more of my own kind of question. So, for instance, on the facade facing the library, not at the location where the arch has been relocated, but at the location where a new arch is being inserted on what's a pretty almost austere facade wall. I'm kind of curious about the interpretation on that. Like, for instance, in that particular instance, if this is a historic building or, a structure of merit, may not be at landmark status at this moment, the report supported that introduction of the arch was compatible and was okay, even though rather than it being distinguished, in other words, it's using more the style of the building architecture. So my question is why in this instance are we looking at an archway that is trying to be a Hispanic style, more fitting with the building normally would be, versus being more, say, taking, more differentiated from the building, just like the other entrance that's being considered on that same facade. Sorry if I lots of words to ask a simple question. In other words, why are we treating the two differently? Why isn't the other one maybe considered more distinct from the building architecture that would have been historic?
You mean comparing the west to the east?
No, I'm looking both on the east.
I mean, because the east, of course, and that was the Warner Gray, very kind of postmodern approach, and so.
I think you're misunderstanding my question. So, for instance, there's a new archway a new entrance is being proposed. Call it the southeast corner, which is the current back entrance.
It's the art receiving facility.
Where the arch is being relocated.
Right.
But I'm not
Oh, you mean the art receiving?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a new one that's being put in for a employee entrance. And there's sort of two different strategies. One is it's distinct, it's clear that it's an addition, let's say. It's modern glass that's going in and opening, and you can differentiate the addition from what was existing. And then the other one is a historic-looking arch that, it's traditional architecture, and it's not as easy to distinguish it from the rest of the building. I'm just curious why the two are looked at differently in that. And this is not so much about this project as I would like to hear, the answer to that in general. Because it's kind of two ways of approaching historic restoration.
An aesthetic choice.
Well, and the other is that the archway that's being relocated on the east elevation is modern, as you said. But it's also being relocated to a non-historic part of the building. And so we thought usually additions to historic buildings in Santa Barbara, we're actually adding on to a part of the building that is historic, or directly abutting it. There's usually been, the preference has been to make that addition somewhat more seamless, and perhaps the Secretary of the Interior Standards
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
But in Santa Barbara, we all, I think, are cognizant that there is a desire to be more compatible visually than in other communities where the additions tend to be often starkly different. So different that it's like they're just sort of shoved together. Here, I think perhaps there's more attention to the holistic fashion to the downtown conveying a certain mood and quality and human scale. And I think one of the ways that's been achieved is by having additions be more referential to the historic sort of streetscape, and you can call it the vibe of Santa Barbara's architecture.
More traditional.
Okay. So you're going with the flow.
Okay, did anybody else come up with any questions, Mr. Chair? Yes, Commissioner Drury?
I just need to be clear because I couldn't hear much of what was going up there. So the removal of the planters along the windows, along the State Street elevation, the removal of the iron doors some years ago, and the removal of the terracotta does exactly what to the resource, besides them being removed?
It lessens its integrity to some degree. We still felt that there was enough integrity left that it would qualify as a structure of merit, but as a landmark, because of these impacts of removing some of these features that were in existence during the period of significance, that did not, it could not rise to the level of landmark status.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to comments then. We'll start with Commissioner Winnick.
I think I sort of made my comment and my question, so thank you.
Commissioner Rios, any comments about the
Not
report?
on the report, but on the project later.
Lavoie, any comments on the report?
I have several.
Okay.
On page 8, on page 9, second paragraph.
Page 9, second paragraph.
Page 8, second paragraph.
Page 8, second paragraph.
In the middle of the paragraph, you talk about, or you use the language, classical style moldings. And on page 9, you use or reference the Italian Renaissance Revival style. I think the distinction of Italian Renaissance Revival style would have been very important to Mr. Cajola and Adler, and that the molding should be referenced as Italian Renaissance Revival style.
Yeah, and the reason that...
Pam's comment. Remember, you can't talk.
Can't talk.
That's the reason. You can strangle me later. Page 26.
Or you can just ask me to do it. Which page? I'm sorry.
Page 26.
Okay.
I worked for Mr. Warner and Gray after this project had been completed, and any discussion of their addition to this museum should include some discussion of Mr. Gray's contribution to the firm. He was involved in the art museum both as a patron and benefactor, and he oversaw this edition, and he was also involved in the addition or the building of the Scott Gallery at the Huntington Library, which derived very similar detailing to the addition that he did to this museum. And also at the end of the first paragraph, the Warner and Gray architects split into the Warner Group and Gray Architects. Page 29, second paragraph, and it should be Warner and Gray Architects. 52. Page 52.
53?
52.
Just a second. Go ahead.
I think you answered that question, actually.
Okay. Skip page 52.
I'll say the page 65.
65.
Is the first major paragraph, second floor addition, bullet 1. The discussion of the Tuscan-style engaged columns that help articulate the new lobby. You refer to figure 10, and when I look at figure 10, I see an Italian Renaissance interior bereft of the Tuscan style. Right figure? The interior? Yes, figure 10.
Figure 10.
Figure 10, just
It's the interior.
I can find it.
City TV, zoom in, please.
Page 65, it's in the middle of the tab.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
You found it?
Oh, there it is, yeah.
Either you need to change that evaluation or change the reference. Page 68 and 69. In the first paragraph, the discussion about the classical style surround modeled on the existing arcade of the building's west elevation, which is the primary elevation of the building and historically the primary entrance to the building. In the best sort of partie of classical architecture, the primary entrance receives the most decoration and the most importance, and a service door should not be decorated in the same style. No matter how important the stuff coming in that door might be. On page 69, it's... I guess I have, being an architectural historian in getting into the nuts and bolts of historical styles, the use of Tuscan-style in the first paragraph on that page, the Tuscan-style pilasters and moldings based on an existing door surrounds on the building's west elevation. Again, the Tuscan style shown on the drawings, while exquisitely correct and perfectly proportioned and beautifully drawn, are not the right style to use on a building that emulates Italian Renaissance architecture. I don't know if you want to change that or not, but that's a comment that I'm going to weigh in on because I don't want the report to strangle me later. And again, in the second paragraph, moreover, the use of classical style. Again, the reference should be, the classical style is a huge, broad category of architecture, and the reference should be Italian Renaissance. Skip that one, 69. Page 71. Actually, this goes to Mr. Winnick's comment. Under analysis, the first bullet point, the freestanding archway is located on in the park wing, the work of Warner and Gray. While not my favorite piece of artifact, I don't think it's extremely well done. And what's being proposed is much better, more correct. This element was used to tie a new entrance and an accessible entrance to the building to the front, and references the front of the building, the main entrance, the historic main entrance, as a design sort of like conceit on a modern building. I think removing it takes away the importance of that signal or sign of entrance from the main building. So I think it has a negative impact on the proposal. Well, not an historic part of the building, is an important part of the visuals of the building. Page 72, second bullet. Quoting but not directly copying the building's historic decorative features and window types. The Tuscan-style pilasters are based on the design features of the west elevation, and again, it's the Tuscan-style pilasters I don't find, and actually they're, if I'm reading the drawings correctly, they're engaged columns and not exactly pilasters, are not appropriate in the Italian Renaissance style, generally. Page 79 at the bottom of the page. Analysis of I can't say the word cumulative. Thank you. Impacts. I agree with the statement that the museum would retain almost all of its historic fabric that characterized it when it's listed as a city of Santa Barbara potential historic structures. And I really wish that it would and could, as part of this proposal, be restored to its period of significance, including the terracotta decoration and the polychrome soffit and cornice. That I can skip. But like I said, otherwise, a really well-written report. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Do you not want to make a couple of these corrections to the report that Mr. DeForest submitted?
I asked Ms. Burnett if she did, and she didn't.
I just said I didn't have any comments on it.
On his.
I didn't have any comments. We can incorporate them, but I don't have any.
Okay. Okay. You can.
Sorry.
Yeah. That was direction I was going.
That way.
To your left.
All right. Commissioner Sharp?
No further.
Commissioner Drury?
Oh, just another beautifully made report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify one thing. I think my line of questioning, maybe I should have made a comment, because it got misinterpreted by Commissioner Lavoie. I mean, we're definitely talking about the same facade. I actually wasn't making a comment or an opinion on whether or not that archway that is in the entrance at the very southeast be retained. In other words, I wasn't trying to make a statement of that. It was more that I was looking at the spirit of if that becomes more of a, quote, modern glass entrance, why couldn't that same approach be applied elsewhere on the facade was really what the question was about. Were different arches being introduced? So I just wanted to be clear about that. It was more of that position, not like, let's always make sure we maintain the arches. So my comment really is I actually like to see a distinction between the modern changes or the new changes and the architecture of the building, and feel that sometimes gives an opportunity for a little more architectural interest and maybe a bigger toolbox of materials in order to go about the design on a building. But that's maybe more pertinent to the next round, the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. All right. What's the pleasure of the commission? Ms. Hernandez?
I wanted to make sure, did you see Mr. DeForest's comments? Did you have comments on them?
We're happy to incorporate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have copies?
Okay, I wanted to make sure that you got them. Okay.
So that we won't be receiving an updated hard copy for the file, is that correct? We will, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to accept the report.
Second?
Okay. Did you want to say with the comments made?
With the comments made and incorporated.
Okay, we had a motion by Drury, second by Sharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavoie, for thoroughly reviewing that 3 times.
Certainly did.
Are we still on schedule? Keep going.
Pam, you want this?
3:20. Really?
Take another one. Thank you.
You know, if
I'm
we
gonna
keep
keep this
getting
one.
reports like that, we're going to get big biceps.
I've got one.
No, I'd like to keep mine, if I may. No, it's
I do.
it's good history.
Yeah, I'm keeping mine too. It's a very nice
All right.
report.
Next item on the agenda is item number 9. It's a concept review for 1130 State Street.
If after
This
that, do you want it?
project is comments only. It requires environmental assessment and planning commission review.
And, excuse me, I'm going to put the drawings out after a PowerPoint presentation, so.
Okay.
Yep.
It looks like we have Ms. Burbank here. Did you want to make some comments before? Go ahead, Ms. Burbank. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Chair Suding and Commissioners. I am Peggy Burbank in the Development Review Division of the Planning Department here, and I am the case planner for the Santa Barbara Museum of Art project. This project is applying for a development plan and community benefit square footage under the new growth management program adopted recently by the council. The applicant has already made a submission for their pre-application review on the project, and we're just actually finishing up that aspect of it. And they have also already applied for the community benefits square footage that will go before the city council. The development plan, of course, will go before the planning commission for decision. So they're really right at the beginning of that process, just as they are at the beginning of their design review process with this body. I just have one other comment to make, and that is I'd like to sort of zoom out, if you will, for a moment to talk about the larger context of the museum's project. I don't think that I would be reflecting any bias to say that this is a very exciting project for the city of Santa Barbara and the community. But it's because it adjoins the library plaza. I would like to let you know that the Library Plaza concept design project has been restarted as of the 1st of July of this year. Now, that was a project that came before the commission in November, December of 2011. And I won't go into the details of the funding for that, but that was recently released, and so that project has been able to restart. So this is a wonderful opportunity to look at these two, both very, very important and wonderful projects for Santa Barbara together, if you will. The Library Plaza project will be coming back for its second concept review on September 11th. So in a couple more weeks, you will get to see that. And in the meantime, and started some time ago, there's been a coordination process between the Museum of Art and the library to work on their interface along the Paseo that runs along the eastern side of the museum and between La Arcada and Anapamu Street. So that is an ongoing process. So that's really all I wanted to say, was to talk about that larger context, and that if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Burbank. And applicant, why don't you give a presentation?
Yes, please.
Please introduce yourself and give us a brief presentation.
Like, I know there's supposed to be 4 people up
They
there.
have a lot of folks.
I'll go first.
Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge Planning and Permitting.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Paul Rupp, Kupiec Architects.
Welcome.
Larry Feinberg, the Robert and Mercedes Eichholz Director of the museum.
Sorry to hear about Mercedes passing.
Yes.
Yeah, very sad.
It's very...
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
And I'm Bob Kupiec, architect for the museum.
Welcome. Okay, let's not all start at once.
Well, I think that, we really wanted to start
Stay near a microphone.
This will be a seated presentation, so I think we really wanted to give the commission a kind of an overview today of the larger scope of the project and an explanation of a lot about the why of what you've seen in the images that are contained in that report. And there really are quite a lot of moving parts to this project that I hope will be revealed today. I think my presentation will probably be about 15 minutes long to kind of try to describe the larger overview of what it is that we've been trying to accomplish over the last 2 years.
If you could please put the microphone a little closer to your mouth. Thank you.
I do want to say that we feel very privileged to be able to work on a project like this, a community project for Santa Barbara. We've worked on a number of different museums over the last 30 years, but I do have to say that this process that we've gone through, especially with the leadership team of Larry Feinberg as the director and the museum's leadership team that has been put in place and their board of trustees, has really been incredibly supportive to make sure that we feel like we're really coming to you today with a project that's been well thought through, is a measured project, something that the museum can achieve, something that actually isn't going to transform the museum into something very different, but something that really, in light of the fact that we have lots of different mechanical issues that have to be addressed in the building, I think the charge that we got from Larry was to also take in a very responsible way, look at the building as a comprehensive project and decide, with the repair work that has to go on and the mechanical systems that have to be replaced and the structural changes that have to be made, where would we be at the end of the day when this project was done? And would we exercise a responsible building campaign in order to make sure that we achieved something that in the end turn the Santa Barbara Museum of Art into the best museum that we could have here in Santa Barbara, something that would really serve our public. And
Maybe we should shift so I could use the keyboard. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Drury?
Would it be better if he, or would it be, or you?
Well, how's this? Is that good?
That's good.
Okay. Well, as Ms. Burbank said, this is a very exciting project, but more than that, it's a really critical project for the museum. You know, we at the museum have really two major responsibilities. They are to protect the building, but more importantly, the art within, and also to make sure that that artwork is accessible to the public. And I think what this project allows us to do is both of those better. And so you see, sir, there's a view of the building as it looks today. But as you know, in 1925, there was a rather serious earthquake. You can actually, if you look at the photograph at upper right, you can see our museum standing while all around it is in ruins. But unfortunately, as I'll mention, we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes, the museum did sustain a little bit of damage, we believe, even from this earthquake. And certainly this is a warning that we need to do quite a bit to shore it up, to make sure it can withstand something like this again. I mentioned the artwork within the building. To say the artwork, we have 3 Monets, the most of any museum on the West Coast. To say the museum, the collection is valuable is an understatement. The $1 billion price tag is probably conservative in this case. But this is what we have to deal with. The roof, among other things, has sort of exceeded its life expectancy. It's over 30 years old now. Been patching it together for some time, but it's time that we need to fix that. We also need to do something about the HVAC system. That has to be completely replaced. You can see we have 30-year-old AC units, and of course it's very important for works of art to maintain proper climatic conditions.
Looks perfect to me.
Yeah. Well, maybe, when we're done with them, maybe we'll put them on eBay, and you can have a shot at them.
You're not going to just donate.
Oh, that too. As you can see, throughout the building, there are serious problems like this, concerned with the environmental quality. Here I show you one of the severe areas of structural cracking. There are a few. This is of great concern to us, of course. But beyond that, we've had problems with the basement, sub-basement level, that there have been leaks in the past. You can see there was a flood in the lower level vault in 92, again in 95. It's been a while since then. So because we have to do such comprehensive renovation work in the basement and sub-basement, we think it's really prudent for us to make another big change, and that is bring all of our storage vaults, which presently are in these below ground levels, bring them up to the ground floor, so we never again have this kind of bathtub effect. You can see also we've got some storage concerns with the renovation of the building. We'll create for ourselves a little bit better, more storage room, but also we'll have some better storage systems. And you can see things are just cheek by jowl there. This is one of our main storage areas and vaults, and you can see that one of the screens is immobile at this point. Now also, a great concern is getting art in and out of the building. This is not staged. This was actually a very recent photo. This is when we were bringing in part of one of the major works of art that's in the terrific show that we have up now called Labor and Weight in the museum. And as you can see, our art handlers are having a difficult time negotiating this doorway. I have to tell you that if some museums who lent to us, if they saw what we had to do, they may not be so crazy about lending to us in the future. So we absolutely have to do something, hence the new art receiving facility that we're planning on that corner. Not only is this a problem getting it through the door of the building, but now the way it works is we offload from trucks on Anapamu and have to load these big works sometimes on dollies or carts and bring them, half a block into the museum. It's just not really ideal, and so we have to address that. Just want to remind you, we've had some really major exhibitions at the museum, some very large, very fragile objects from China and elsewhere. It's very important for attendance, but also I have to say, there are a lot of people in this community who will never get to New York, let alone to Paris or England or anywhere else, and this is their chance to see the world. This will be their only chance to see some of these great objects, and so it's a very important responsibility for us. In more recent years, we've done some very important shows. If you remember the Picasso and Braque, the Chinese painting show, we have some great shows coming up as well. Again, a Picasso is a very valuable and fragile object, and it's important if we're going to continue to do these kinds of shows to do something about the art receiving area. Something else we wish to do is convert some of the office space to gallery space. Here too, I have to say, it's the community's collection. And what we need to do is try to get more of it on view for the community, more of the permanent collection on view. So one of the things we can do is to convert some gallery space. You can see sort of a selection of galleries, of objects from the collection there in one of these proposed new galleries. Another one, new gallery that we would create, which also can serve as other kinds of community space. And as regards to the community, downstairs on the ground floor, some of the changes we're going to make would allow us to create this much larger multi-purpose space that you see here, which not only will allow for more community gatherings, but also, as you might know, we have some very wide-ranging education programs. We're a town of 90,000 people, and we have 25,000 children involved in our education programs. That's almost all of them. And we really can use at the museum a much larger space to accommodate these children. This would help in that regard. And then finally, we would really like to be one of the most green museums, art museums in the country. And so we're going to strive for that, and we'll attain the highest LEEDs level we possibly can. So with that, I'd like to turn the matter over to our architect, if I may, who can go into more detail about our plans.
Lights.
Actually, looking at the plan.
Okay, I'm sorry.
If it's feeling too dark, I can turn one light on.
Okay, level? It's good.
Okay.
I'm making sure everybody's staying awake.
Well, we've spent some time at the museum, as you all...
Mr. Fugate, could you put the microphone?
Here we go. I'm going to use this one. Sorry.
We have one of these for you.
So we're looking at the footprint of the museum as we all know it, just so that you can be oriented to the following slides that are going to come. We're also using this slide for a different purpose. I mean, the museum has really grown incrementally in different eras and different times. We've also kind of indicated that they all have different floor levels. Some are 2-story, some are 3.5-story. Over time, even the additions that occurred kind of created problems between each other in terms of how the museum flows and the circulation pattern that exists within the building. So one of the tasks that we were charged with, aside from figuring out how the cacophony of mechanical equipment can be reorganized so that we'll function like a 21st century museum and maintain waterproofing, was to really begin to figure out how do we examine this building as if it were one building rather than 5 or 6 subsequent additions. Clearly, systems in the building need to be addressed. The seismic retrofit of the core post office facility and the McCormick wing, which was added onto it shortly thereafter, have gone through engineering analysis. There are real problems there. We now need to develop a campaign to begin to start to address that. Roofing and waterproofing is an issue throughout the building. If I back up for just a second, you'll see, there are many skylights that sit on top of this building. They've all been tarped over. They really no longer serve the galleries in ways that are useful. Daylighting issues within the building and how it affects the art that's contained within really have to be looked at. We'll upgrade all of the basic services in the building, certainly to be, from an energy consumption vantage point, both the HVAC and dehumidification and lighting in the building are issues that we really want to look at carefully so that we do achieve a high level of LEED certification. There are plumbing systems and stormwater systems that are ready to be retired, and currently we're under elevated in terms of getting the general public around the building, as well as what you'll see as far as moving art in and out of the building as well. All of those problems need to get fixed, but they also pose opportunities. If we're going to do this, how do we do this one time? How do we develop a plan for implementing all of these changes that actually will let us do a couple of other things that will help improve the museum to fulfill its mission here in Santa Barbara? How do we improve public amenities? Can we grow gallery space? Can we make better storage facilities? How do we reduce the cost of operations within the building? All of those are critical issues that we've been charged with looking at by the museum leadership team. It's just, again, just to orient ourselves as we go through some images. This is the existing lower level floor plan that we know. That's how we all come in the back door as we think about it now. We're seeing what's under the steps out front, but currently there are 2 sub-basement levels that you're also going to subsequently see that exist in this area. This is used for a variety of different purposes right now. I mean, there's some library storage which will move out of the building and actually wind up moving to the library across the street, we think. That will help clear a way for us to more effectively use this lower level space. In fact, this portion of the building will be reorganized for the highest and best use of compact storage for the art, as well as a receiving facility and what we're going to propose, and you'll see a little bit later on, is the new art receiving facility with an elevator that will access all the levels of the building so that art can be moved around safely and efficiently. This is a critical mission for the museum to achieve, and to get the art that's in those sub-basement levels up to a safer level. So the 2 sub-basement levels that are now filled with a variety of different kinds of storage will wind up being repurposed for different kinds of administrative offices, museum services, the woodworking shop that's currently occupying some of that lower level space, the new education department. And we think we can take those spaces and actually convert them into very livable space for museum staff to use those B1 and B2 levels. The proposal of the new art receiving facility on the Anapamu side of the street, I mean, one of the problems that we have right now are trucks that park and queue up on Anapamu. This is the current operation of how a truck gets unloaded, with a forklift in the street and then wheeled into the existing courtyard that has an elevator lift that's in the sidewalk. I'd reiterate what Larry said. I mean, as far as museum standards are concerned and insurance standards and other lending institutions, I think that it's really time for the museum to move into this millennium and make sure that we can borrow those terrific shows that are out there and have the kind of robust exhibit program that this museum really deserves. This is the new facility in that courtyard. In fact, we would expand the courtyard out to the sidewalk line and develop a room that, for all intents and purposes, is one giant elevator. This would be the lift that comes in. You can see that a truck can back up, and in fact, it's a double-loaded door elevator so that when the truck is parked off of Anapamu Street, these doors can open up and the art can actually be immediately wheeled into the art gallery so that we can get the truck unloaded as quickly as possible, queue the art up inside the museum, and then start to deliver it to the lower level of the building or the upper level where it's intended to go. That freight elevator is also designed so that it not only supports the weight of the art coming into the building, but it supports the weight of the art on a forklift truck. So this forklift can now drive back and forth into this facility and really create a much safer situation on Anapamu Street for both traffic, trucks, and pedestrians. There's also, we've been working, having conversations with the library about the museum's desire to work a scheme on that would extend and reinforce the La Arcada Paseo and design it in such a way that it could actually support a truck backing in and parking and side loading into this elevator in intermittent times. Those deliveries don't happen very frequently, but we'd really like to be able to get truck traffic off Anapamu Street and into a safe parked situation where the art can be dealt with. That's what Anapamu Street looks like now. And that's the building up. We went too fast. That's the building that we propose, and that's the building with all of its landscaping and trees in place. Another view walking a little further down the street. There is one tree that will be removed and one tree that would be relocated in order to accommodate this facility from the other side of Anapamu, and that's the structure that that we would propose. Additionally, as we move further in that lower level, we begin to renovate the park side entrance to the building and some of the core museum space. Some of the circulation pattern in the building is intended to be changed, and that's why you're seeing this new staff entrance that exists on the park side of the building. This will not only give us a staff entrance separate from the public entrance, but it will also provide us with a secure path of emergency circulation out of the building during construction. And in subsequent to the construction, it'll also allow the gift shop and the bookstore ultimately to remain open, independent of the museum hours. It's a security issue that is a problem right now, and we really are trying hard to address that. But this scheme also allows us a plan that keeps all the fire stairs active during the construction phase of the building, because one of the museum mandates has been that during this phased construction that we think will go on for 5 or 7 years, that the museum remains open. That we will not close the museum during any of the construction phases. Different parts might be closed, but we will kind of jockey the construction around to make sure that we don't lose our museum for any time, nor a significant amount of time. While that parkside entrance to the building is being renovated, there's some mezzanine space that will also be addressed. We think that this can be, this is also one of the issues that we have in terms of, coming in that backside of the building, with the bridge that comes across and the staircase. There's some better wayfinding method to actually to orient people when they come into the building. And we would like this entrance to be more inviting and more transparent and actually let people have an idea about how they can move through the museum in an efficient way. So when the scheme that we propose will actually create a new staircase and will open up the second level gallery to this space, so that now for the first time when you come in that entrance of the building, you'll know that there's a gallery above you and you'll know where to go. We also think that there's part of that interior wall that can be peeled away with a new glass wall, so we'll be filtering daylight from the existing skylight deeper into the building. But there is definitely a desire to make the museum more transparent to the public and give them a clear pathway for how to circulate through the building. In this reorganization of the stair and the way we're proposing to reorganize the gift shop and the restaurant, you can actually have a clear view all the way through the museum to State Street from that new entrance. And this also gives us a new bridge link that comes back and connects two of the galleries, so ADA access to the building is now complete. There's a real ring of circulation that would exist on the second level of the building that doesn't exist now. There are dead ends within that floor plan that will go away and give people clear handicapped access all the way into the location that now contains all of our Monets. So we think that that's a major improvement for access through the building, and that this we'll also have, by virtue of this new entrance with a bronze decorative archway and a more glass in that facade, to actually have a view back to the courthouse. So we really are trying to work through making connections between the museum and another significant historical resource in Santa Barbara. What the gift shop and the museum will be reorganized so that they have a kind of symbiotic relationship and help support each other in their activities. There'll be this bathroom core will not only support the museum and its opening hours, but the restaurant facility. There'll be a commercial kitchen, which doesn't exist now. In addition, this other space that I'm losing my pointer here.
Here, you want to use this one?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Bill. We'll be reorganizing the structure of this space so that there actually can be a multi-purpose facility for the museum. We're always short of meeting areas, conference rooms, classrooms for educational programs. I mean, the new and improved gift shop, along with a new cafe, with the two of them functioning together. Also, this multi-purpose facility, which can also be supported by the cafe, will give us a variety of different options for how to reconfigure that space. It'll have movable partitions, but we can run a number of different activities at the same time, and it's kind of captured space because of the move of the library that we've never enjoyed before. The main level of the building, which this is the existing floor plan, and in fact, this is kind of one of the mezzanine levels kind of block off the connections that one might enjoy as you come up. This stair kind of, it's the staircase that's a problem, and we wind up in a dead-end gallery situation where the only way to access this is through a chairlift if for ADA requirements. By renovating that lobby and creating this new connection, it'll be much easier for people to travel through, and actually through a ramp system that will connect these two galleries together. It'll be the first time that somebody doesn't have to use a chairlift to get into that space. We also think that we are proposing the inclusion of a new staircase, a main stair, so that when people do come to the museum from the front entrance, there's also a clear path of travel that'll get you to the second floor and let you know how the wayfinding aspects of the museum should evolve. It's just a better storytelling methodology for viewing the art. But in fact, by the time this is done, what we're really after is that clear, easy circulation pattern and better axial relationships to the central Ludington Court of the museum, so that people can finally actually move through the museum in a much easier way. So from up above, it's a little dark, but you'll be up on that second level, and the connection between the art gallery and the rear lobby will be much more transparent. From Ludington Court, as you come in the front door of the museum, it'll be the first time that you can actually stand in Ludington Court and have a line-of-sight view to the second floor. So in this antiquities gallery that's here, this new staircase with its balcony will actually allow us to have a way for people to know where to go. We always like to tell our joke is that one of our consultants who was working on this project and is a longtime Santa Barbaran said to us, "There's a second floor." They're not the only ones who have that problem, and I think that how do you creating more visual public access in all museums is really a desire for any kind of renovation program, and we think that this is an important new possibility for really connecting the museum together in a better way. So we'd arrive at the second floor, and there'd actually be a new gallery space there that would help us expand gallery space by several thousand square feet. On that level, we'll just start marching around the building to do the seismic renovation work and taking galleries apart and putting them back together with the seismic reinforcement in place. Phased from one side to the other side. This actually gives you an idea of just how important it is for us to be able to access all the floors of the museum with this new art receiving facility. We'd really like to see the upper level do the same thing. This is the existing floor plan. When this building was designed, it was designed with the intention that those offices could move out someday, and they have ceiling heights that are capable of supporting gallery activity. So the first phase of the second floor renovation is actually to build a one-story addition for new offices on top of the Davidson Gallery, to include a new elevator lift that would double our current passenger elevator capacity and give us a space where we could actually take some of the offices that are in this facility and move them over once this is done. And what that does is this is the existing cornice line of the rear of the building, and it creates this new one-story window band addition with a clay tile roof. And in fact, I think from our perspective, that's the existing condition that's there. And, there's a kind of trellis. There were a number of interventions that I think were attempted to unify all of these different parts of the buildings that came in subsequent years, but I think I hit it too hard. But that would be the office space addition with a clay tile roof, and we actually think it's very sympathetic to the McCormick Gallery that it's adjacent to, and does a good job at really helping to unify this facade a little bit and next to our new Parkside entrance. So once those offices move to their new home, this creates a new art gallery opportunity for us on the second floor. Additionally, in this roof well space that exists between the post office building and the Peck Wing, there's a gallery that we think that can be infilled with a corridor link that comes across that's set back from the parapet line on State Street that could have a kind of outdoor sculpture courtyard. It's pretty deep. It's a pretty deep well, but in fact, this also gives us this kind of better connection to the Asian collection that's up above and begins to give us that circulation pattern that we've been looking for. There's the inclusion of new public restrooms. We're certainly under bathroomed in the museum, and I think the building department will be holding all of our feet to the fire to make sure that we comply. That new infill gallery could serve for a number of different, we think of it as a multi-purpose facility that could be used for different kinds of exhibition events. The McCormick upper level gallery will be renovated and a new floor installed to help brace the walls that are there. We have some serious problems about how this structure was integrated into the old post office building, and one of the interventions is to actually brace those very tall brick walls by creating this new floor level and buying yet another gallery floor for the museum. Did I do that quick? Again, the upper level gallery with some object gallery around the perimeter where the roof is kind of canting in. We'll do the seismic retrofit of the Asian gallery, and in the end we wind up with that same similar pattern that we wound up on the lower floor, a way for people to come to the museum and know where to go and easily travel through and see the art collection. Ultimately, there's a little, the roof is pretty occupied with mechanical equipment. We're certainly using whatever roof space is available for the machine equipment that is to be placed on the roof. I know there's an air handler here and here. And there's the proposal that the existing elevator be extended to this floor. The reason being for a rooftop terrace and pavilion, so this elevator shaft would be extended to come up to the roof. There'd be an access path to get to the pavilion from this elevator, and the stair core that exists in the Peck Wing on State Street would be extended up one floor to make this meet egress requirements for a facility on this roof level. Again, this could support a number of different kind of museum and community activities, and we think it's kind of the last hurrah on the top of the building. And you can kind of see, this is a photograph that we've taken from the courthouse tower. You're seeing the pyramidal skylight over the post office building, and that's the McCormick Wing now. So, anything that we're really proposing on the roof from the courthouse, equipment or otherwise, is pretty obscured from the courthouse just by the existing eucalyptus trees. So this is State Street as it is now. That is the State Street elevation as we propose it. So this stair tower would rise to this level, and this piece of roof would be added. There's the existing parapet and setback. So we are engaging the existing post office roof with a roof of exactly the same profile as it comes across the State Street facade of the building.
Go back and forth a couple of times again.
Sure. I mean, right now you're seeing the back of the 86 wing of the building here, and that's what would result as a result of the inclusion of that infill gallery in between the buildings. We don't really have a before and after because that's the after of what you would see of the roof pavilion if it were constructed. You know, additionally, as was mentioned earlier, you know, the museum has been in conversation with the library about the development of Library Park. One of the initiatives that we are deeply hopeful that happens, we've talked to the county at length who've done a geothermal project for the courthouse. We'd like to propose that as the park is renovated, that space be used to incorporate geothermal wells. We think that there's enough of a yield that we can actually take care of all of the air conditioning needs of the museum by this geothermal system. It also helps reduce the size of the equipment that we have to use in the museum and place on the roof, and it's long-term just a more efficient system for the museum. Additionally, just outside in the plaza area, we're also proposing an underground vault that will house a 400 kVA gas-powered fuel cell. And that will generate enough electricity at half the cost of current electrical rates to power not only the museum, but power the library and the city's parking garage. So we think that there are some important things to study there that could actually provide us with, you know, a really great mechanical system for the museum and help us to reduce long-term operating costs in the museum for generations to come. And I think that's it.
Yeah, it says
Thank
on
you.
the slideshow right up there.
There you
Susan, should we lay out plans for you? Do you want to flip through plans, Phil, or have you got enough? Thank you.
Yes.
Is that helpful for the commission to ask questions and comments?
I think we would like to look at the elevations more than anything.
Well, yeah, they're probably all in the same set. Right?
Yeah, but I mean,
You're going to see lots of floor plans.
okay, so where am I going to get to the elevations?
You might have to look at this.
How about A2? Looks like we're going to start with the A2s.
Those are existing.
If you're going to point to anything on the plans, please use that. Okay.
Those that exist.
A 2.0.
Existing.
Existing. Then A 2.1 is what's being proposed. Let's just flip it over. I was going to try and show it, but it's not going to work. What does this door do now? What is that serving?
What you see, obviously, with this project is a range of additions and ways that the needs were addressed. In an earlier point, that was a loading area, and now it will serve to keep the art separate from catering functions, because we know art arrives, it needs to be protected in one way, and you probably don't want to mix security-wise with food, catering, but we all know those are a very important part of the community support of events at the museum in conjunction with art.
Okay. I'm going to open public comment, and I have two speaker slips from the same person. Mr. DeForest. No, he does not.
Okay.
Nice try.
Thank you. Just a general comment. I think the new receiving entrance door area is too prominent. People are going to think it's the main entrance to the art museum. I would like to see that toned down a little bit so it doesn't look like it's more important than the main entrance. Also, what happened to the roof garden? Is that still part of your plans? Thank you.
Okay, I am going to acknowledge a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury in opposition, and then close public comment, bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Winnick, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
First of all, I just want to commend you on even the report. I know that it's not, you guys didn't generate the report, but you contributed the drawings to it. And no, it was really well put together and really easy, very legible, and so too is your presentation, so thank you. It's always a pleasure when it's done really well and it's easy to understand. So I just want to say that off the bat, even though that's not a question. Really, the only question I wanted to ask, well, two. First question is just about the receiving area on Pamu. Thank you. I almost said Anacapa. I'd like to know a little bit more about the yard that contains the area outside the elevator. It's like if that's an essential component, or if that area would work without those containing walls.
Well, actually, that space is used not only for the museum's refuse containers. It's kind of Marburg Central.
Oh.
The library and the museum both share that courtyard to house their Marburg containers. And actually, for us, as we look at this, especially as in tandem with this notion of a geothermal system, because below that...
I think we're talking about a different spot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about right on Anapamu where you're creating...
No, we're talking about the...
I don't remember seeing refuse facilities there. They're currently there?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
behind the wall.
You're talking about this area right here, correct?
Right, there are containers that are there right now.
And they actually have 4 dumpsters.
Okay, I've missed it. Wow, okay.
And Barry, it has a second floor, too. Never mind.
And Barry also...
Thank you, Phil. Wow. And the art... Should I resign now? Okay, that's it.
Mary, I just wanted to address that. Part of what you're seeing is, like so many cultural facilities, John Copeland, who's the facilities director and head of the exhibition installation group, is when a show shows up, and particularly a significant show, he doesn't have a lot of control out of the size, the scale, the type of the way things are being delivered. And so we've tried to build, by design and a lot of discussion with his leadership, we've tried to come up with a lot of flexibility in the way that art can arrive in different scales and sizes and kinds of trucks. And part of the reason that court's so big is it gives him room for certain deliveries that he can break crates down as a work area out there. They can put their staff bicycles out there and keep them secure, where there's a lot of multiple layers of function that obviously behind a wall out of the public site is good for their security, and it's just good support of, again, the community service with the exhibits that arrive.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'd also say when that project, should that project happen, and we hope that it does, that courtyard, when that art receiving elevator shaft is built and we're doing work there, the further that we extend that vault space out, to that fence line, buys us some incredibly valuable basement real estate. If in fact the geothermal system is possible, it's kind of the ideal location for all of the pump facilities that exist to run that system. So we're kind of in an ideal spot to accomplish a number of different things at the same time.
Thank you. And then my second question is going back to the entrance. I'll keep beating the same horse. On the east elevations, just looking at the entrance facing to the what's currently the back, or you're calling the park entrance, and then also the new employee entrance. I'm just kind of curious from your point of view. I know there's the historic guidelines for the El Pueblo Viejo, and I know that influences people's style and how they do their architecture. But since you guys are the architects and you're getting to design a building, would, like, for instance, and I can't do this without a bit of a comment, I think that your entrance, that's the new park entrance, is more appropriate, like as a response to, it's kind of a neutral modern intervention, let's say, in a more historic building, whereas the other one I feel is more of a kind of a forced reinterpretation of classical architecture. And I'm sorry, I can't do it without a comment. So my question really is if you didn't have such stringent guidelines, let's say, would you not consider a different way of handling that entrance? And have you guys studied that?
The staff entrance.
Museums,
yes, for the staff
like
entrance.
other institutions, inherit things. And the archway is an inheritance, you know. It's something that's been part of the building. It was built as a commemorative to other people who actually helped endow and make additions to the building. So we feel it's important in the legacy of the museum to try to reuse that piece. And we felt like if we really need this entrance for strategic reasons, that actually to move that piece and not discard it, but to actually incorporate it into the museum fabric was just a way of, you know, still paying homage to people who paved the way for the Santa Barbara Museum.
There's one more element is that, you know, we've worked very closely with a tremendous staff at this museum. I mean, to a person, they're outstanding. And we really felt it was important to honor their entrance with something that doesn't fill back door, yet is clear to the public that it is not, that it's a staff entry, not a public entry.
All right. I will allow the other commissioners to ask questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Rios, any questions?
Yeah, on the roof garden. I see it as an interesting thing, but I note that there's only one elevator going up to it, and that I'm not sure how you're going to deal with the mechanisms that go on top of an elevator.
The overrun.
Yeah.
And
the other thing is that we're talking about a plan that is 5 to 7 years, et cetera, et cetera. In all reality, aren't you expecting to serve food and drinks and things up there?
You know, I think that the incorporation of the rooftop terrace would give the museum the ability to have a variety of different venues. You know, the fact that we will improve the cafe and incorporate a real kitchen that they don't have. I mean, can I imagine?
I understand that's the ground floor I'm talking about. If you've got an event on the top floor, I think you're going to have to, I think if you're talking about long-range planning of 5 to 7 years, being realistic, if you're going to have events on the kitchen floor, on the top floor, there will be things served. And so shouldn't that be incorporated into your plans now?
I think that the intention is that there would be some facility where the restaurant through the elevator could actually.
I'd like to see how that works, how that would work.
The upper level roof terrace would be a more of a catered operation that would be supported by the restaurant kitchen that's down on the first floor.
Like, are you familiar with the Winnemucca Terrace at the Bowl?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you
said. The Winnemucca Terrace at the Bowl, where it is catered through their commercial kitchen, where you can appropriately handle all the health department needs, yet get food up safely.
Yeah, I think one of our problems in really attempting to try to develop a kitchen on that floor is that we'd run out of terrace and pavilion. So
yeah, there isn't that much space. I recognize that, but there's also a reality that if you have guests up there, they will want to have some libations of some sort. And, yeah, nothing wrong with it. It's just reality.
One of those events.
Probably not. Let me see. One other thing. That's are you prepared to? I have to word because questions. Are you prepared to offer us a tour of the facility so we can actually see hands-on exactly what is proposed? I'm more of a visual person, and I would like very much to. Well, I would wonder if the rest of them, so we don't waste your time by individuals, but a group of us went and had a tour.
Oh, I'll ask that question after we get through everybody's questions. Are you done with questions?
Yeah, I'm done with questions.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Actually, I have none. The presentation was excellent and answered some of the questions I did have.
Commissioner Sharp?
I echo those feelings that it's very clear, concise, and only a few comments.
Okay, Commissioner Drury, any questions?
I just for historical purposes, does anybody know the timeline when we stopped going in the State Street elevation, when that ceased to be an entrance?
It's still an entrance.
Still an entrance.
And it has a second floor, too.
Okay, well, just as an aside about the second floor, I went in the museum many times as a kid, and then one day my dad said, well, have you seen the doll collection? I went, what doll collection? He said, well, you just go in the front, and you turn left, and you go up by the cloakroom, and I said, there's a second floor. I was like 10 years old, I had no idea.
Say who it was. No.
Yeah, I'm going to find out that consultant's name.
No more
questions.
So that way you don't give them any, no, sorry.
My question is, what are the physical opening requirements for this door? In other words, is it to here, from there to there, or is that going to actually open for...
The archway does not open.
Okay, so this opening could get smaller in height.
Actually, no, because we looked at this very carefully again with John Copeland, and the different truck lengths that come to the museum, you need about 14 feet.
From here to here?
For truck back clearance, then you need room for seals. Because this is the improvements we're trying to make, is the truck can back up, the doors can open, and the doors hide the dock levelers and all the technology. And then the truck can then back up against a seal. You can seal it for all the environmental protections.
In case it's raining or whatever.
And then you can load quickly out, and it can leave quickly. And that's why this height is limited, because if you see on the other elevation.
Right there.
Yeah, both of these heights, like for instance, we could remove the round element.
So this could get smaller, it could get shorter, it just can't get any narrower, and it can't get any shorter.
Basically, that data.
The operating door is really...
And that is while we're still on this, this is the elevator overrun.
That's correct.
Is there any way to not have that so highlighted, or is there any way to make it lower or integrate it in, or is it absolutely necessary?
I have to be the one to say that in this instance, it's really absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
and
we've kind of played this, we've skinned this cat so many different ways, and we really have tried to shrink this overrun. You know, the problem is overruns for elevators are not small, and our issue for the museum is that elevator really needs to reach the upper level.
I got it. Yeah.
And just so you can feel comfortable that we made it absolutely as small as possible, we did. And the reason we
well, there's a comment. Okay.
I was just going to give you the fact that we did engineer an elevator that we know works, and that's the footprint. So we did really thoroughly study it.
And then the last question is, how does that fit into our guidelines? That glass portal, that glass fenestration?
Well, I think that our goal is to increase the transparency of that entrance. I think that, there's a number of ways for us to detail the decorative bronze piece that's there. But, I don't want to preclude that, we really do have two different kind of entrances to the building. And I do think that some of our interior photographs also suggest that if this were a more transparent link, there'd be a closer tie to Library Lane, there would be a closer view, a better view of the courthouse. And I think, one of the things that we're really striving to do is to invite people through that entrance and make it clear as to how the museum functions, And this is just a personal predilection. I think the idea that this entrance isn't exactly like the front entrance and doesn't try to mimic it. It's not part of a historic building that was built. It was really built as a much more contemporary building later on. I think that the inclusion of the archway in that opening was kind of an oddity, and in fact that turning it into something that is just more transparent, I think would actually make that rear courtyard kind of a much more exciting place.
Okay, comments?
More
questions. Okay.
What steps are you going to take to ensure that you are flood-proof in the basement? Or I know you're abandoning that area, but what are you going to do to make sure that because your foundation is down there and other things, and
Well, I don't know how we can guarantee it. I mean, I know that, I know that
the museum has you post a bond.
And your insurance just went through the...
well, I think one of the principal members of our firm will be chained in the lower B2.
That's a good idea. But you talk about the thermal thing in the park, that's going to be submerged too, and could well be flooded. I mean, so there's got to be means of and are you taking steps to prevent?
Fortunately, I think that, 30 years after these other buildings were built, the architects at the table may argue with me, but I actually think that there are a lot more robust methods of waterproofing and water,
Which my question is, you're going to be doing it.
Yes, we'll be.
And I'll answer one thing, is some of the water intrusion you saw in the photographs was from basically less than ideally located leader lines and things that introduce water in ways that weren't coming from through the wall in ground.
So that can be easily corrected.
And that's why, obviously, again, John Copeland is making sure we do the right thing in our routing and our thinking so we can avoid all of those potentials by good thinking.
You're hoping to avoid slump pumps and things like that?
All of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner,
Not to say they won't have them. Yeah, just I wanted to follow up actually in your question line, Mr. Chair, and simply on the elevator penthouse that's over the freight elevator intake. Could that elevator penthouse not have a hip roof? Could it just be flat at that line where it changes from beige to terracotta? Would that fit?
Are you talking about?
Yeah, would that fit? Would the engineering enable it just to stop at that point?
Where the clearance is slightly intruding beyond the eave line, so if we did do it flat, it would grow a little bit.
It would. Okay. No, I'm just trying to find out.
But we could. Obviously, there's a number of architectural ways we could look at things.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Comments, Commissioner Winnick. Any comments?
You know me, never a comment. Okay, well, I want to start back with where I started before. First of all, I really think this is a great presentation. Again, I just want to reiterate that. I think you guys are showing a real love for the building, and I think in general the project is, I feel that it fits within the guidelines, and it certainly is supportable. And actually, in your presentation, thanks for the 3D simulations because they really helped. One of my concerns was that there's so much populating the roofs and all that, and would that be visible? And I think you really, assuaged my concerns that obviously it's visible, but it's not overpowering or disproportionate to the building. My biggest concern, actually, as you could tell from my line of questioning, was the amount that it projects out to Anapamu at that service yard where the elevator is. I think adding the elevator wing, I think, makes a lot of sense. I totally understand that. I wish it didn't have to intrude out as far because it just seems to be a little bit aggressive to the street. Just not to say that it's not going to work out and that you'd be able to pursue that, but if I had a wish, it would be that it didn't extend out as far. And I think I've already heard that the comment's coming, and I'll just agree to it before even it's made, and that is that I do think that entrance would want to be less prominent. So I would ask you to study that to see that maybe it doesn't need to have the arch. I also think that that's the one penthouse that I think puts a little more emphasis on the end of the building where the architecture is not. All of a sudden I got an echo. So I think in that case, maybe not having a hipped roof on that penthouse might be appropriate. I just, again, ask you to study maybe making it more in the background. And looking at the elevation on what we're calling the park elevation, the east
elevation.
East elevation. I don't know why I'm echoing so much. Let's try moving this. The issue about the the renovated park entrance for visitors. And I understand this issue of the guidelines, whether or not a building meets the guidelines. I think particularly seeing the modernity of the architecture that's being proposed on the interior, I really personally like the idea of it showing its face on the outside of the building and being distinct from the rest of the building. And I actually feel like right now the architecture is a little bit in between the modern glazing system that you're showing, and I would embrace it going more modern. I think it's maybe still being, it's showing maybe hearkening back to the archway that used to be there, but now it's only as tall as an 8-foot pair of doors, where before the arch was actually more impressive. So I almost think that the entire opening should be considered the arch and the architecture more modern. And I'm sure you may hear other commissioners that you may get competing points of view on that.
No, you don't.
I may get ended soon on this commission. But no. And on the other door, now I understand why the arch is moved. I think I would recommend that the arch be just the arch and don't add more to the architecture of it. Unless I'm misreading it, it seems to me that you've added ornamentation, and I would suggest it's still really a secondary or third entrance to the building. I don't think it should have such prominence, and maybe if it's hearkening back to the person who donated it to the museum in the first place, perhaps it should just be what it was, and that is that artifact, and it's on the museum building, and it's kept as quiet as possible. And I think most of the other, I think your attention to detail speaks for itself. And also, having heard the comments regarding the historic report, I would suggest be careful about what architectural style you go with. If Tuscan isn't in fact what this building is, perhaps let's make it compatible with the Italian Renaissance. And I would love the idea of restoring the terracotta facing State Street. If that's something that, maybe that's in the 7th year of the plan for the renovation of the museum, but if that could be restored, I think that would be wonderful, so that the building could head to landmark status rather than just structure of merit.
I think just as a point of information, we don't believe it's terracotta.
I think it might be
stone. It was
We're not
carved
sure.
limestone.
We didn't.
And the decoration that was removed, was cut out.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, anyway, then I'll
We're not
correct.
sure.
Thank you. So whatever the decoration is, it would be wonderful if that could be part of the building program at some point to bring the building to a landmark status. Because I think being the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, it certainly warrants having that, or merits having that kind of status. So thank you.
Commissioner Rios, comments?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. And I am very happy to note that you are coordinating with the public library, because I think this is a block that is very, very important to the city. Because you speak of the length of the planning process and the 7 years in the construction center, I would like to know if you have a priority of what is going to be done first, second, and third. I'm sorry.
He was shown the order of the presentation.
Oh.
I should let them answer that.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I took the various points, and if I missed it, I apologize. My concern is the State Street area, where the new project binds into the cornices of the existing post office, former post office. I'd like to really look at that very, very carefully and see how it works. I'm glad that you're retaining the tree and the hedge in the front. I think that's very important. But I also would like very much to go on a tour to really be absolutely sure that I totally understand all that you are proposing. And I agree with a lot of what you say on the entranceways. And sometimes, if you look at the proposals for museums and things that are now going on in various other cities, they are keeping the older building intact and appreciating it, but the newer buildings can reflect the modern era. And they aren't dealing with El Pueblo Viejo guidelines, but still there is a balance that can be done. And I think this is a comment, the light that comes in through that entranceway makes a big plus in the interior of the building. So these are sort of and I also would like further defining of the roof garden and how it works and things like that.
Commissioner Lavoie, comments?
The museum is an important cultural resource and an exceptional one for a town this size. And the stewardship over the years has been well done. And the original building, the post office.
Are you on your microphone, sir?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
No, it's
I'm
not
not
good to
clicked
you.
on that. Have you been forced for? I'll never forgive Adler for stripping the original building, because I go down to Pasadena quite often, and that post office is spectacular.
almost the same.
It was a copy. It was a glorious building, as was the courtyard. But anyway, he did it, and we were stuck with it, and it's now historic. And to take a clue from what he did, though, is he took an ornate building and radically simplified it and left precious little ornament at the entrance. And that's a theme you should follow. I made comments about the Tuscan order being appropriate. Let's go back to the big picture again. You have an ambitious project, probably well needed. I'm familiar enough with the museum and having been in there, even on the second floor, my first trip. And it has always seemed like a hodgepodge. And sometimes that's charming and sometimes it's aggravating. I'm sure as a functioning facility it's aggravating. So I recognize the need to scoop out the inside and make it work better. And that's really not our concern. What happens on the outside is our concern. And what you're proposing, while ambitious and exhaustive, isn't out of scale with the existing facility nor the property. And I think that's an important statement to make. We've seen a lot of museums come by lately who seem overly ambitious with their money and patronage, and seen some huge projects come through. This seems modest in comparison. I mean, yeah, the numbers are large, but it's modest in comparison to what's there and what's being proposed. And I would encourage you to proceed with that. So my comments are more about the details of what you're proposing than the size, bulk, and scale of what you're proposing or where you're proposing to do it. I think your design is commendable in having solved all those problems. There was a comment about the original building was immediately compromised when the first edition was put on it. It was, I'm trying to remember the building in Italy that they were looking at. It was copied several times in that period and later in the Renaissance, through the Italian classical revival, and then the American Renaissance. It was seen as a pavilion with nothing around it. Well, welcome to the 21st century. And so everything you add to that should be very secondary to it. So I would suggest you reconsider all of the tile roofs as an addition to this pavilion. That they sort of compete. When I look at, the side mirror elevation, all these step tile roofs sort of compete with the box. And that it might be a better design without a tile roof, at least on most of it. Something to consider. It was done in the West Edition, I think not so successfully, and that they chose the wrong crown molding. It's a little bit brutalist modern.
It's very different. Yes.
And it's very different. And if you're going to take away 90% of it, you should take away the other 10% of it and pretend it never happened.
Where are you talking about? I'm sorry. This?
That. Just make that go away.
Well, in all fairness, we should be looking at that.
That. If you're going to make most of that go away, make all of it go away. And then, it's, and simplified. Not modern. It can't be. You're in the district. But simplified. The detailing reserved for the major pedestrian entryways. Everything else a hole in the plaster wall. A big hole, about a hole in the plaster wall with a nice recess. And keep the detailing simple. I mean, even going so far as saying taking off that crown molding and just have a band molding, and then have your loggia up on the top. That sounds beautiful. And keep it simple. From historian's point of view, would prefer those be square pilasters similar to the ones that are now currently at the front entrance, just pilaster rather than a column, and pretty narrow, because that what was done in the Renaissance period before they started really caring about proportions. And I would commend you that the detailing I've seen, the proportions and the detailing of the columns and the classical elements is perfect. Just the wrong building, unfortunately. So, for the most part, you have my support, but I think it needs some simplification, actually, to make it more compatible with the significant part of the resource.
Commissioner Sharp, comments?
Thank you. I don't want to particularly repeat the comments of my colleagues, but I want to just reiterate a couple points that concern me. When I look at the entrances on State Street and the proportion of the structure of both entrances, and then we obviously look at this and this and this, I think, and I know this has been said more than once today, this is just too much fenestration. I think that this is overdone. It can be elegant, but not quite so much detail. And I think this probably looks about right. It's much larger than this, but you say it has to be. I think it would be helpful if you were to relook at the elevator tower and possibly lower this plate height down, which I think you probably can do, so that you do get the impression that this is dropping and building back up at that corner, rather than being quite so domineering at that corner. The band of windows, to me, is a little bit contemporary, and I know there are offices behind each one of those, but I think something, Bill mentioned a band rather than a crown molding, possibly. Maybe stepping this back a little bit on this level on both ends would help. It's a little bit too contemporary for my thoughts. I'm wondering if you can't have, as I read the drawings, there are no landscaping areas along the east elevation here. Is that correct?
No, there will be.
Yeah, we're doing it in collaboration. Right. Because
I know that the drive is coming back here, but you do need to get some
there'll be relief.
Minimal but espalier landscaping to break that up. Other than that, the rooftop gathering area bar, I think that's going to recede sufficiently that it won't be noticed from anywhere. Or the outdoor entertainment area, whatever you want to call it. That's all.
Big health department.
Right.
Commissioner Jury. Mr. Jury has the floor.
Thanks, everybody, for stealing my thunder. But, I agree with the previous comments, and I would even say that eliminating the tile on all these elevator towers would probably be a good thing. And yes, certainly the simplification of that big access door for paintings and all the previous comments. The problem with the east elevation entrance is that it's sort of not really there. I mean, when you turn into the parking lot, you're sort of looking down, and people that don't know there's even a museum there kind of go, gee, I wonder what that is. So I think that should be made more prominent somehow. Detail, a surround, something. I love the idea. I think you're making it transparent to help at least with that idea, so that, because you really can't see in right now. So that's, I think, one of the reasons you're flooding this area with light. So that's a big help. I think that the idea of simplifying particularly the Anapamu elevation to go with this. This is really a lovely wall right here. This elevation is really beautiful, and that simplification would go a great way to emphasize that. I think this is. I love the museum. It's meant everything to me in terms of what I do, and really appreciate this work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have anything different to add, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. How many commissioners would like a tour of the art museum to sort of understand these plans?
I would. I would.
So, okay, we'll get that through staff and arrange that. I didn't want you to waste your time with just one or two commissioners, but
I beg your pardon.
well, we have 3 commissioners.
We'll wait for time.
No action. This is comments only. So.
Oh, seriously? Oh, that's right.
Is it going to Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Then actually forwarded to the Planning Commission with positive comments in support of the size, bulk, and scale of the project.
With the exception of, or whatever.
No, in general.
Are these our comments to get us to the next level with Planning Commission? Or are we coming back here to?
You're going to Planning Commission.
Yeah,
So are we
Planning
doing?
Commission's fine. That's fine.
The compatibility analysis criteria?
No, not this time because you're not getting an approval.
Oh, I thought that was to get us to Planning Commission.
No.
No.
Well, staff can, staff will.
Okay.
We do?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, so then the maker of the motion needs to read those compatibility requirements. I don't know why I don't get that, but.
Even as currently presented, is compatible with the architectural character of the city and neighborhood in the design of the project, compatible with, I can't read it anymore.
Is it on the cheat sheet? Is it on the cheat sheet?
It's right here.
The agenda only says comments only.
Chair Ludi, Chair Suding?
I don't understand why
Chair
we're making
Suding?
the compatibility criteria analysis.
Chair Suding?
Help us, Ms. Gannon.
Okay, hold on. Let me get a reading from
They're not
staff.
giving it an approval. They're
Pardon?
not giving it an approval. They can go ahead and, if the commission feels like they can send it to the planning commission, they need to make the compatibility criteria analysis, and it will go to the planning commission. They're not approving it right now.
So you do want us to make compatibility?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you can do that.
That's fine, it will do
It's
that.
information that gets conveyed
That's
to the
what-
Planning Commission so
yeah.
that they know you're satisfied.
Right.
I'm sorry, I just want to.
And will we see this again?
Oh, yeah.
The proposed project.
Excuse me. Mr. Lavoie has the floor. Please keep your mouth shut. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Lavoie.
That proposed project is appropriate in size, bulk, and height, and scale. And that the project is appropriate for adjacency to a significant resource.
You're not clipped.
Did you get that stuff?
It's right there.
That the project is compatible for items 2, 3, and 4.
Second the motion.
Okay, we had a motion by Lavoie. We don't have a secretary. I don't know what's going on. Motion by Lavoie and a second by Arias. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Well done.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Letting us.
Thank you for giving us a report early. That's really helpful.
And we to see you.
Well,
And a good project.
Can you imagine that report without getting it early?
We are not adjourning. We're adjourning to the September 12th meeting here in this room.
What? We're not
The
adjourning that?
September 12th meeting of the Planning Commission.
Wait,
We
that
have-
doesn't make
we have-
sense.
we have a meeting
get
on
the
the
11th before it.
Yeah,
Oh, we do?
You get to do that at the
Oh, okay. Then
September
we are,
11th meeting. You
I
have to
beg
do
your
that.
pardon. We are adjourned.